Welcome to the podcast, Eye for Talent, the show where we have an eye for talent. I'm your host, Dylan, aka DJ Cereal Sauce. I'm a YouTube content creator, occasional Twitch streamer, producer, and apparently working on a bunch of side projects with a bunch of other people that fall into that same kind of category. Always a fun time, but this isn't about me. This is about my guest, CR2 Obstacle, aka CR2 or Obstacle. You can split the name up however you like. He's also a Twitch streamer, occasionally does YouTube content on his own. He peaked top 500 in Overwatch and somewhere in the 200s, I think. But he's also an artist, trying to kind of work on making his own comic. He is also apparently really fucking good at chess and is also a personal trainer. So generally a very well-rounded person, and that makes for a lot of diverse experiences across all those things, and that's great. I think the best thing about this is the fact that you've tuned into my streams a couple of times, and I've tuned into your streams plenty of times, but I don't think we've ever really been in a position where we're in a call verbally talking with one another. And so, of course, the first time that it happens is on a podcast. So welcome on. You ever been on a podcast before?
No, this is my first time ever on a podcast. I have done a panel at a convention before. I did a panel at a university in my hometown when I was a high schooler. I did a panel, I believe, at that time I was competing in Smash, and I think I did a panel on the barrier to entry for competitive spaces and how it can be very daunting to enter competitive spaces if you're someone that is coming from a casual gaming background, aka everybody. So,
interesting. Yeah. Okay, so I guess we can just add more professional Smash player than the rest of us.
No, I was sort of mid. I was like above average as a player, but I competed in I'm from Georgia. There was a very notable Smash player by the name of Fatality. He was a very well-known Captain Falcon player, and he was the Georgia representative. I was nowhere near that level of competition, but I still enjoyed it.
Huh. Yeah, that's again, to me, that's still impressive enough if you're able to host a panel, even if it is like a university panel. It's still one of those things that it's like, wow, I'm at least knowledgeable enough on this kind of thing that I can go and kind of represent it for either the college that I go to or the college that, like, a college in the area. Because like for me, I haven't actually done anything like this before. However, this is a really niche thing. It's going to sound really dumb. When I was in high school, near the end of my probably junior year of high school, if I had to guess, there was some random like auditorium thing that we were doing, but they did these inside of the gym because it was a high school, and of course they did. And they and I was talking with somebody, and I was hella distracted. And for people who don't know, I'm really a big fan of like the beatboxing scene, which is a little less cringy for me to say now than it used to be like 4 or 5 years ago, and especially a lot less cringy than it was when I was still in high school. Point is, they had like it was like a 2-round beatbox competition between 2 random people they picked from the audience. And I was so pissed off because I was easily one of the only people who could actually do that back in high school, but I got distracted talking to somebody and I didn't hear them call people. And I still sometimes think about that to this day, and I'm like, where would my life have been different?
That is tragic, actually. That is tragic. Dang.
It sucks. Either way, the point of that is that, like, at the very least, you get to kind of represent something that you're semi-good at to people who actually care at, like, a respected establishment.
Oh, yeah, it was a very fun experience. I enjoyed it. I did it alongside another classmate of mine who's still, me and him are still best friends today. And so it was very, like I said, it was a very enjoyable experience to share my experience with navigating from being just a casual player and high school student to being like, you know what, I enjoy this enough to try to go out, put myself out there in front of people and try to pretty much subject myself to the judgment of others. And I feel like that was the biggest daunting factor of competitive gaming, is you're putting yourself in front of a bunch of people who will tell you that you're trash, who will tell you that you're bad. And you have to be able to like kind of take a lot of that stuff on the chin.
Yeah, seems like that helped prepare you for the situation that we find ourselves in today. Internet media landscape. God forbid you try and pretend like you're good at something, and somebody's like, no, you're trash. You clearly play at low rank. You're garbage.
Yeah. Whenever I make content on TikTok, it essentially, every time, even if I'm just making a video simply for the sake of education, like I'm just trying to like share information that I didn't have when I originally started playing Overwatch, I'm like, you know what, let me try to give other people a leg up. I'm still met with a lot of hostility and animosity. Just recently I made a video talking about how what separates a lot of lower ranked players from high ranked players isn't some isn't the fact that these high-ranked players are no-lifing the game. It's the fact that these high-ranked players are typically better at learning than low-ranked players. They're able to, you can put a high-ranked player in a situation and they're going to be like, okay, I understand it now, much faster than a low-ranked player would. Low-ranked player, you put them in a situation, they're going to mess up a lot more often, and it'll take them more times to figure it out. And that was what it was for me. It took me more times to figure stuff out, more play time, more hours to figure stuff out than, let's say, someone who I know, like, for example, one of my Twitch mutuals, Joystick. He pretty much started playing Overwatch. He switched from console to PC, and he has spent pretty much his entire Overwatch career in top 500. His entire Overwatch career has been in top 500. I originally played Silver. So like I eventually caught up with him and was able to, compete also in top 500, but it just took me longer to get there because I had to learn how to learn. And I had a gentleman in my comment section arguing with me that you can't learn how to learn, and there is no disparity in people's capacity for learning. And I had to just kind of take a backseat and just be like, you know what? I don't really feel like this is something that I can argue with you about, because
that is that is such that is so many like fundamental things that you're having to argue that you're like, I don't have the bandwidth or the character limit on TikTok to be able to explain why that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I found myself in situations like that quite often, where I would quite literally have to do one of those like science videos where I pull up the studies that showed irrefutable proof that there is indeed a disparity in learning capacity, and that there are indeed methods to improve your ability to learn a subject, like breaking things down into more individual components and then practicing those individual components intently and deliberately rather than mindlessly. And that you can improve through mindless repetition, but deliberate repetition will always beat out mindless repetition in terms of like how much improvement you get per time spent. But I don't think that person would have been very receptive of that message in the first place. So
yeah, they'd hear the first 5 seconds and be like, I ain't listening to all this yap, dog. Like,
yes. Yep. I don't care. You're wrong.
There was actually one more thing that I was kind of curious about regarding the panel that you were hosting, which is like, obviously the majority of the people who would have attended that would have been people who are at the very least interested enough in that scene to show up and just try and understand like what are, trying to understand what they don't know, I guess, to put it as simple as possible. But like, did you ever have any situations where, because especially like there's certain, I mean, especially nowadays, it feels like you can't be a part of any community. You you can't enjoy anything before people come in and just make fun of you for everything. But there are especially certain scenes that tend to get a bit more flack than others, like the Smash scene, the beatboxing scene, as I was talking about earlier. People who want to do the kinds of things that we do, especially at a certain age, are definitely kind of semi-playfully but not fully playfully mocked by people, being like, oh yeah, big dreams, bucko, go work a 9 to 5, live the American dream type people. Did you have any people who were kind of like that at all upon hearing about that?
In terms of at the panel, not really. Of course, outside the panel in real life, I'm trying to think. Real life, of course, there are going to be doubters. There are going to be people who, advocate for certain lifestyles and or life choices. In regards to in the panel, the closest thing I got was more so a kid asking questions about like how to convince his parents that this was something that was worth time doing. Because the thing about Smash tournaments, it's very different from Overwatch. Overwatch, you could just play at home, and a lot of the tournaments you're going to be competing in are going to be from home. Smash required you to physically go to the tournament location. And that is something that you need parental permission to do so. You need transportation. You need your parents' support to be able to do that. And it also costs money. Tournaments cost money. A venue fee, a tournament fee, all those things. I think the cheapest tournament you can go to maybe like $8 that I went to. It was like $8 to enter. So you need parental support. And I think the question that he asked was more so about how to convince his parents to support him. And I was very 100% honest with him that I did not have an answer at the time. I was a very fortunate person that my parents didn't entirely hinder me from doing it, but they did not 100% support me. I'm a part of the CR2 in my name. It's a part of a larger gaming group, and they would take me to these tournaments. And my mother was just, kind enough to allow it. She didn't necessarily facilitate it. The money was my money. I had to make that money on my own. I had to make these connections and make these friends with people who would take me to these tournaments. And then eventually when my best friend, when he got a car, he and I would drive the tournament sometimes. So I had to tell that young person that, hey, the best I can tell you for my path is make friends and try to like not let, gaming make your grades go down. Because as long as you can maintain your grades, typically parents aren't going to care what you do. Typically. There are those parents that are like very aggressively against gaming, but a lot of them, as long as you can prove that you're not going to let your grades diminish, they'll let you, screw around and do stuff.
Yeah, but I see the point that you're trying to make, which is like ultimately you didn't have a lot of people who were doubters about the vision or whatever, just people who would show up to that who maybe did have some people who were, haters of the vision, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, nice. And then, God, let me think. I'm trying to think of the rough age gap between. This would have been in
2016, 2017.
Okay, I was thinking 2015. Because now it is.
Yeah, I graduated. I graduated 2017 from high school.
Oh, okay, so it's actually okay. That's not as much of a gap as I thought it was. What the fuck? Never mind. All right. I was like, the landscape was so much crazier back then. No, it wasn't. That was 2 years prior to when I was.
Yeah, it's just like I'm trying to think. It was still kind of bad. There was still like on a social level, there was still a lot of stigma. There still is a lot of stigma surrounding gaming and how profitable it is, like a pastime. There's still like, I don't know how much you see it, but there's still conversations about how gaming is like an immature hobby, especially for young men. How it's like, oh, if you play video games as a man, you're not a man, you're a boy, and yada yada yada. And like once again, even with my partner, I'm fortunate enough to have been able to find people who don't hold things like that over my head or use it to diminish me or disregard me. I have a partner who, even in spite of me, I game, I try to, I stream. I am a pretty nerdy person. She still respects me and treats me, like a person. She doesn't seem like, get off that game. That game is stupid. That game is dumb. She doesn't try to like limit my gaming time or anything like that. Because I have friends who are in relationships like that where they have to get like permission to game. And like, if to each their own in terms of how their relationships work. This is not me dissing their relationships. It's just more so I am fortunate that my partner does not do that because I personally would not like it. My partner, from what I know, my friends are perfectly happy in their relationships. I just would not be happy in a relationship like that, and I'm fortunate that I am not in a relationship like that.
Exactly. Yeah, I was actually just thinking about this. I just realized. I mean, obviously, the biggest reason why like gaming as a hobby is looked down upon as one of those things. It's not as much as it used to be anymore because again, like now certain gaming related things and like professional esports related stuff like that's now coming into the forefront and people are realizing like the power that it holds in terms of like finances and whatnot, but it's still easily the most looked down upon hobby amongst men most of the time. But and a part of it is obviously just due to the fact that like it's still one of the more new things, right? Like relatively speaking, relative to like other pastimes that men participate in, it's still one of the youngest and still a lot of people are growing and learning how to understand it, I suppose. And there's plenty of people who grew up with one pastime and are now seeing this and are still trying to kind of warm up to it. But I think another reason is probably the fact that gamers are also typically the ones that are more overtly expressive of the bad habits that people tend to attribute them to. Because like I'm a big proponent of that idea that like me sitting here for X amount of hours playing a video game isn't that much different from you sitting there for the same amount of hours just watching like a football game or watching like a TV show or whatever. And science would obviously argue that in certain circumstances what I'm doing is actually more helpful for multiple things. But I think a lot of gamers, relative to say people whose main hobby is like watching TV shows, are a lot more outspoken about those they're a lot more outspoken and tend to show those negative qualities a lot more. So it's a lot more in the public's eye about like, see, look at these gamers, look at how dickish they are. And it's like, well, that's just the very loud minority of people. And you don't see that nearly as often for other groups. At least I think so.
I mean, it's definitely a social circle thing. It's a social circle thing, and I think it's also internet anonymity. Internet anonymity gives people a bit, because like when I switched from Smash to Overwatch, the toxicity spike was very fast, was very large. Because like I said, Smash tournaments were in person. Like if I beat someone in Smash, they would shake my hand and then get up and leave, and we would go communicate to the TL what the result of the match was, or they just, if they were really pissed, they wouldn't shake my hand, and that was the extent of it. I play Overwatch. I beat someone. I'm being told very nasty things, or if I don't perform very well, I'm being called very nasty things. So it's like the internet anonymity adds to it, and like once again, the social circle thing is like I come from a family that really, really likes sports. Like really, I'm from Georgia. Family loves Bulldogs, and I also have family that loves Alabama, like college football. Hey, they can get nasty. They can get super, super nasty. People who are big into sports and other hobbies are also nasty. It's just that I would actually even argue that they're just more bold about it. And I think people kind of like they normalize that type of toxicity, whereas gaming toxicity isn't normalized. Like there is no shortage of videos or evidence of people getting very verbally hostile with people over like team rivalries, or even sometimes physically violent over team rivalries. And there's no shortage of that. It's just very heavily normalized for some reason. And I don't know why. It's happened way before our time that type of stuff got normalized and became like, oh, that's just what you do. You riot for your team, and I'm like, I don't get it. I personally don't get it. And I feel like it's unfair to gamers because, like, yes, we have, like you said, that loud minority, but every space has a loud minority. But I think a lot of people allow the loud minority within gaming spaces to take up a lot more space than it deserves.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That's yeah, I hadn't even thought about it like that actually, because I see a lot. You're like, internet toxicity has not quite been normalized as much as you being toxically rooting for your team in a sports ball game of any capacity.
Yeah,
and there's a lot of things that I see that are like, I mean, I guess this isn't relating to internet. This is relating to internet toxicity, but not specifically in the gaming space. But like when you see people say particularly nasty things on the internet, and then somebody will screen grab that and be like, "But this person isn't normally this mean, I swear." And it's like, I would argue that they probably are. I think the internet just gave them a space to do it without the threat of getting their teeth kicked in. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I think that's another interesting facet to it, where like, especially because a lot of like football games, basketball games, or whatever, if you're going to experience that level of toxicity, it's usually going to be with the people around you, physically in the same space as you. And so a lot of people they've normalized it to say, oh yeah, that's just what it is, but they also don't have any doubts in their mind that like, oh yeah, this person can get a little bit heated over a football game sometimes. With internet stuff, it's like, this person just called me every slur in the book. You can't tell me that they don't act like that online, or that they don't act like that in person, because I can see them doing it right here in my face. Like no self-respecting person would go on the internet and start calling people a bunch of slurs if they also wouldn't then, like, that person would probably do it to their face. Were they not threatened with the threat of getting their teeth kicked in?
Yeah. I have a very unique dislike for internet toxicity for like a very similar reason to that. I've done physical contact sports. I've played football. I've done wrestling. I have done combat sports. And trash talk is a part of sports, which is what people use to defend toxicity in gaming spaces. They say, oh, it's trash talk. Oh, it's banter. It's just a part of the space. If I was playing on the defensive line, or if I was playing any position in football, that for that matter, and I'm talking trash with the person in front of me, I'm incentivizing them putting me on my fucking ass. I'm incentivizing them running me over. I'm incentivizing them hitting me as hard as they can. I found so like there's just more. If me talking trash in like a face-to-face sports space, you understand there's more risk of retaliation, and there are a lot of people who only talk crap online because there is not that fear of retaliation. They know they're not about to be like, they're not gonna have to face the consequences of having pissed someone off. They know they can talk their trash and then just log out, leave game, exit game. They, like the whole, after you played Overwatch, where someone tries to get their last little word in and then leave instantly. Yeah. Like it's just like, it's literally, I just don't have much respect. Like, trash talk is a part of competition, yes, but in terms of online space trash talk, it is some of the most cowardly form of trash talk. And it's just like, dude, you can't even stand 10 toes down on what you believe. You can't stand 10 toes down on what you're saying. If you were face to face with a lot of these people, you'd be like, good game, and then go talk trash out of earshot.
Yeah, cowardly is actually, I think, my favorite word right now. I go through phases of having my favorite word. I think cowardly is my favorite word. There's a lot of stuff happening on the internet space all the time. And as of recently, I've realized that like some people are realizing the consequences of their actions and are now trying to like deflect it onto other people. And it's like, oh, you're scared. Oh, I love this. Yes, be a coward. But sometimes if trash talkers are cowardly, it's like, now you just embarrassed yourself and you got nothing done.
Yeah, I don't understand. I don't understand it from the perspective of, like, I don't do it, but I understand it from the perspective, like, I can, like, rationalize how they arrived at that form of action. Because even one of my younger brothers I don't know how toxic he is now, but he was very toxic on Fortnite. And the space kind of, like, proliferates itself. Like, if you're, like, let's say a normal person, you enter a toxic space, it's very easy for you to become a toxic person. And it kind of just, like, it's a self-repeating cycle. It's a machine that keeps itself running. And that toxicity just keeps going and going and going because you can only be a victim of toxicity for so long before you become a toxic person yourself.
Yeah.
And so then you start to engage in the cowardly behavior, and then it just creates a huge freaking environment of cowards. And then one thing I found, especially on the topic of people being scared about the accountability of their actions, is you look at the way that people behave in Overwatch games when they realize that not everyone agrees with them on like who to blame. Like you'll see a game where someone is blaming someone and saying, "Oh, that guy's trash," and then people are like, "No, they're not. they're playing fine." And then like they're like, "Oh, you guys must be doing it with him, or y'all must be a stack." And it's like, no, no, people don't have to all be in cahoots against you to disagree with you.
Yeah,
you're just wrong.
This is not an enemy of my enemy is my friend type. That's not, or I guess people who agree with my enemy are not necessarily their friends. That's not really.
Yeah, like they're afraid. Like, wait. Could I be wrong?
Yeah.
Could I be in the wrong here? Like, no, wait, nah. It can't be.
That can't be happening. Leave game quickly.
Yeah, they're terrified of that possibility.
Yeah.
They're horrified by it, and they're like, no, you have to be doing. You have to be doing. Or like, it's even worse sometimes if it's like someone with like a feminine name or like a Mercy. They're like, oh, is that your boyfriend?
Yeah.
Is that your boyfriend? Are you guys dating? I'm like, oh my god, bro. God forbid people stand up for someone of an opposite gender. Jesus,
God forbid anybody
bro.
stand up for anybody when anybody is is harassing them. Holy shit,
like, dogs! Like, oh! You're telling me that I'm being mean to him? You're being nice to that guy? Y'all dating Nate y'all. Like, no, I'm just a decent
y'all dating Nate y'all with one of those fucking copy paste emoticons of like the smirking face.
Yes, bro. It's so annoying. And another thing also is like, I have to remind myself of this when behavior like that happens in online spaces. I have to remind myself, like, there are kids on this game.
Yeah.
And like we could very easily be interacting when we're interacting with people who are behaving this way. These could be teenagers. I recently just found out that one of my viewers, who he doesn't act like this by any means, he's a very well-behaved person, but I found out that he just recently turned 17. I was like, damn, I forgot that. Exactly. I was like, dang, bro, I forgot.
I didn't know there was anybody under the age of 20.
Exactly. Like when you get older, you forget that people younger exist in certain spaces. Like it's like out of sight, out of mind, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, they're like, oh yeah, I just turned 17 or I just turned 18. And I'm like,
what the fuck?
What?
Boy, ain't no way.
Is that allowed? Is that legal?
Twitch TOS says you're fine to be here, but like that doesn't feel right.
Yeah, so it's just like I have to remind myself sometimes on TikTok, Twitch, Overwatch, that some of these people are kids, and that doesn't excuse their behavior, but it does change how I interact with them, because there's a very distinct difference in how I interact with someone who's a kid behaving that way and a grown adult behaving that way.
Yeah, exactly.
So it is something that I try to remind myself of, to not like get lost in the toxicity. Like I don't know, like toxicity creating toxicity, because when you deal with someone's toxicity, you yourself become kind of like angry and bitter. But to deal with it, I just tell myself, you know what, this could easily be a kid, and the only thing I can hope is that they grow out of it and they mature, hopefully. So yeah.
Yeah, and if not, hopefully they don't interact with me if they continue behaving that way.
Hopefully they go away and leave me alone, at the very least, leave my space alone, because it sucks, because all you can really do is protect your space. You can't really do much for other people's spaces.
Yeah.
But all I can really hope for is, hey, hopefully they don't continue to bother me in my space.
Yeah, exactly. You've already mentioned this a couple of times about where you've come from and the CR2 tag that you have, and you've explained this to us, I believe, once or twice at this point. I guess the whole CR2 group that you are a part of, I'm just curious, like, who are these people that are in that group with you? Like, how did you end up? It sounds like you guys are all just like friends that happens to live in the same space that started something. And so I'm just curious of like, yeah, how did you end up? How did you end up meeting these people? Why did you decide to start the group that you did? And like, what are any of them doing now? Because I've only kept up on the whereabouts of two of them, because they're the only two that I know about.
Well, I didn't start it. It started long before me. It started because some of the older members of the group are like in their 40s with kids.
Okay.
Like even when I joined, I was 16, and there were members that were like already in their 40s with kids. It's a very large group. It started long before me. It's from my hometown. But it stands for Crew Round 2. I don't even know where Crew Round 1 was. It was before my time, but essentially it was a bunch of guys who came together. They played Smash Brothers Melee, and they were really good at it. They competed at different tournaments. They would go to EVO or CEO, which are big gaming tournaments that occur throughout the United States. I think one of them is in Florida, one of them is in Vegas, or at least in Nevada. And so they came together. They made that group, and how I joined, I reconnected with one of my childhood cousins. when I was in high school. His name was Darius. I reconnected with him, and he told me like, "Yo, bro, I'm a part of this group that we play Smash together at Second and Charles. Like I can't remember what day it was, but he's like, yeah, we play games together at Second and Charles. You should definitely pull up and come through." And I was like, "Oh, bet, sure. I've never played." At that point, I had never played Smash before. I was like, "All right, bet, sure, I'm down." I had only played it like on like the N64 here and there, and I went there with a friend of mine named Jordan. I went there with a friend and we kind of auditioned, and we were ass. We were bad at it.
That's fine. It happens.
But they said, "Hey, you guys are cool. You guys seem like good kids, whatever." So then we became a part of the crew. Shortly after that, I invited another friend of mine by the name of Cody. He came in and he joined, and I joined at about the age of 16. I was like 15, 16 when I joined. And yeah, that's more or less how I became a part of them. And essentially, what a lot of it is, it's like 40 or 50 of us. Like we have a Discord.
Damn.
We have a Discord, and hold on. Yeah, we do. Yeah, our Discord channel is filled with people. Some of us compete in Tekken, some of us compete in Smash, some of us compete in Street Fighter, Dragon Ball Fighters. Some of us compete in other shooters like Fortnite or Overwatch or Valorant. Essentially, it's just a brand. It's a brand. It represents a group of people from my hometown who all decided to, commit to gaming as a recreational pastime rather than some of the other recreational pastimes that existed in my hometown, because I don't come from a very good space. I come from a hometown of a lot of bad influences, and so it was a very, very good thing to find these people who just wanted to play video games. We would go over someone's apartment, we would all pitch in on some Little Caesars pizza, play some Mario Party, play some video games. Like these people were great. And so, yeah, essentially it's just a brand. It's a branded group of people who all just want to play video games. We just all want to play video games together. And like these people are like pseudo family. Of course, I'm closer with some more than others, but we've gained members, we've lost members. By lost members, I don't mean they left the group, but lost members, like we've even had members that have passed away in the time that I've been a part of it. And it's pretty much just become like a very, very reliable social background, like a very good social network. That I can always fall back on. If I don't have anybody else, I know I have them. So yeah.
Huh, nice. Honestly, when you said that finding the recreational pastime of playing video games with these people was great given where you came from, I thought you were going to go down the route of like, yeah, we didn't have many sports to get into because our teams fucking sucked. I was like, oh, okay, so you're like, let me pivot to the most natural thing.
No, I played sports still. It was just my hometown had a lot of bad influences. Like I had people on the football team who would ask me if I wanted to do drugs or if I wanted to participate in not so ethical recreational activities.
Right.
A lot of a lot of gun violence and stuff like that. And I was like, you know what? I kind of don't want any of this stuff. Yeah, I'm just gonna go play Smash. Yeah, I'm gonna go play Smash. So yeah, but that's CR2. Essentially, it doesn't like mean anything super deep or anything like that. At least to my knowledge, I'm not the leader of it. There's another dude that's the leader of it. His name is AJ. He's CR2 Korean Panda. He's the leader. He's the head of it. The CEO, you might say. But
who manages the finances of the CR2 corporation?
Yeah, because like I don't know how many people. Okay, it's at least it's like well over 51 of us.
Yeah, I was genuinely expecting this to be like a situation where it's like, yeah, there's 10 people if I'm being generous. I didn't realize this is like a generation spanning thing technically.
Oh yeah, it's several generations. Like there's, funny enough, a very, very cool thing happened when me and some of my closer friends that I went to high school with and also joined CR2 with. When we were in like high school, one of the members of CR2, Q, he has 2 sons. Right, they were kids. They were like kids, like elementary, middle school kids when we were in high school. Right, I think elementary school. And then I remember, I think it was like a year or two ago, my buddy Cody ran into one of Q's kids at a fighting game tournament.
No shot, dude. That's sick.
Yes, and it was so cool. It was so funny because it's like, wow, like it's been around for a long time. Like we've seen people grow up, we've seen people develop families, get married, the whole 9 yards, and it's been it's been nice. We've had our disagreements, our quarrels, our issues. Got a bunch of guys in a group chat. We're gonna argue, but I enjoy the camaraderie and the brotherhood.
Hell yeah!
And so yeah,
that sounds like fun. Good for y'all. Okay, what encouraged you to start streaming in the first place? Because frankly, by the time I had found out about your streams in general, I I mean, I don't know how long it had, like how long you had been streaming since before that point. I was just like, oh, this guy seems cool. He plays Overwatch. I like Overwatch. And now it's been like a year probably. No, not quite a year. Probably been like
I didn't start
6
streaming until
months.
January.
Yeah, it definitely hasn't been a year. Then I almost just lied out of my ass for no reason.
Yeah, I started streaming in January just because I've been getting pressure to stream for years at that point because I was already fairly good at Overwatch, but I was in college, I had jobs, I was working a lot, and I was like, I don't know. And also I didn't have the PC for it at the time. But then when I built my PC, people were like, oh yeah, you have no excuse but to start streaming. I was like, still I don't know. And it was a while until I was like, you know what, screw it, I'm gonna stream, and I started streaming. There were some people that supported me at the time. I don't really rock with those people much anymore, but yeah, I think what it was is like I was like, you know what, I'm good at this. I am going to game regardless. I might as well try to game with other people and also, make a little bit of money. It helps with grocery money or even like recreational money if I want to like get something nice for me or my girlfriend, or if I want to pour back into the stream. Like, for example, I think right now I have it to where once I get a certain amount of subs, I'm going to get a face cam.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. So, and with like, I guess most people just like, hey, you know what? I'm good at this game. I'm going to game regardless of whether I make money off of it or not. So if I can potentially make some money off of it, why not?
Fair enough, yeah. I mean, sometimes I always think that there's like these big plans that people have when they go into this, but I'm also one of those people that also really likes having conversations with other content creators about like, yeah, you probably should at least just be doing this because you want to do it. Otherwise, you are going to hate your life when it doesn't turn out the way that you want it to for the first little while.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Because yeah, like some people that I've talked to, they were like, well, we chose to start streaming because we had a group of people and we would all collectively do this thing all the time. A lot of people started streaming because, hey, look at that. America's been hit by a pandemic. Where else am I going to fucking go right now? Might as well do this thing where I have literally no consequences if it doesn't work out.
I mean, I'm glad I started. It's fun. I enjoy doing it. I will say that content creation is a bit harder in ways. Like, obviously, I expected it, but there are days where I'm like, I'm still tired. Probably don't want to stream. Tired. But then once I start streaming, I feel fine. That's what gets me to do it.
Yeah.
Is like there'll be days I get home and I'm exhausted. I'm like, I just want to lay down. But I'm like, I have to stream. I stream, and then I feel fine. Literally within like 30 minutes into my stream, I'm like, yeah, I'm glad I stream. I'm glad I started streaming.
Yeah.
Like, I thoroughly enjoy streaming. It's very, very fun. As long as I have the time for it, I'm gonna keep doing it. So
yeah, and
I like it.
God, I can't even fucking imagine how difficult it must be right now to, like, especially for somebody like you. Like, I can't imagine how difficult. Because I have a buddy who has been streaming for like 4 years, and right now because of where he's at and because of like circumstances that have happened in the area, like, he has to work 2 jobs and still find a way to try and make streaming work, both for his schedule as well as just trying to help kind of buffer the money that he has in between paychecks and whatnot. And I can't even fucking imagine how difficult that must be, especially if you're a person who has to deal with all of these constraints and restrictions while trying to figure out how to plan for doing something larger, where you're like, I haven't even begun working on this thing yet because I'm just doing what I'm doing. Like, I can't even imagine how hard that must be to have to try and organize.
I mean, it does require a level of productivity for me that isn't particularly natural. I enjoy having free time, but I definitely have less free time than I used to. Essentially, a day for me might look something like waking up at like 9 or 10. If I'm streaming in the morning, I'll stream from 11 to 2. If not, it'll look like me collecting clips in the morning when I wake up, doing artwork for TikTok and or art studies for my comic. It's typically the art or content creation related. And then from there, I start getting ready for work. I go to work. I work from like I have to go to work from 3 to usually 3 till like 8, 3 till 8 or 8:30. I'm usually out, and then I'm home by like 9:30, and then I start streaming at 10 p.m. After eating briefly, and then from 10 p.m. to like 1 a.m. I stream, and then I go to bed. So it's literally not much free time. It's not much free time for me to fit everything in. But I mean, I manage, and like Sunday today is my day off, and I get to just do fun stuff like this. I get to enjoy myself. I get to like do things purely recreationally, and it's nice.
Right.
So I mean, it's tough. It is hard, and it can be stressful. But I wouldn't say that it's like a bad stressful. It's okay, I got a lot done today stressful.
Yeah, like I'm just exhausted at the end of the day because I was doing a bunch of things, but like least
things got done.
Yeah, precisely. And I imagine, like, as quote unquote stressful as some of these things can be, I also imagine it's at least a little bit easier to manage once you have like more of a set in stone schedule put in place. Because, like, ironically, the issue that I have is there's a lot of things that I want to do, but I always like to have the ability to have not necessarily free time, but I like to be able to have like certain low commitment things so that if something else comes up, I can quickly pivot and do that sort of thing. And so, like, I was streaming very consistently for a while. I was doing, like, the amount of things that I was doing prior, like, the list of things that I used to do back in 2020 leading up until, like, the middle of 2023 was kind of ridiculous, and you would almost not be able to believe that it could be done. And then something happened that messed with my schedule and made it so hard to adhere to, so I broke the whole fucking schedule. And now I don't really have one besides literally go to work, do what I can at work, and then come home and figure out what I should be doing. So, like, as much as I would like to get back into streaming, it's one of those things where it's relatively low commitment per se compared to other things that I like doing, but also that's like multiple hours that I'm like, oh, but if something comes up, I'd like to be able to pivot. So it's the point I'm trying to make is that I could imagine it would be a lot more chaotic and stressful if you were operating off of that, as opposed to just like, I do this at this time, I do this at this time. If stuff has to change the schedule, whatever, I'll just adhere to it the next day, or at least make people aware that the schedule has changed for today, and then just figure out how to accommodate that going forward.
Yeah, that's pretty much, the schedule makes it a lot easier to follow, and exactly like you said. If I do have to pivot, like if something comes up, like, oh man, I have to, work called me in, or I have to check on something with a client, or something came up with like my partner or whatever, then yeah, it's not too hard to pivot, because like my community is very understanding, and my community isn't like aggressive, and my community also isn't huge, which I like. My community isn't like massive to the point where I feel like there's a crap ton of people getting mad at me for not streaming. It's more so just like they are completely understanding of things. They'll like say, where's my stream, but like jokingly. So yeah, I am. It definitely, the schedule part of it helps a lot, and it definitely keeps me grounded in terms of like not losing my mind with how much stuff I have to get done. And I do work 2 jobs, but I don't work them on the same days most of the time.
Right.
I work one job throughout most of the week, and the other job I work on Saturday. So it's actually not too bad. It's not too bad. It's still stressful, but because it makes my Saturday mornings are really long. I don't know if you saw the message, but I coached 61 people on Saturday. Yeah, 61 people. I had a class that had 30 people in it. And so like stuff like that is hard, but it was only on Saturday, so it was doable.
Yeah,
it was very doable.
Par for the course. It's totally reasonable.
Yeah,
but no, that's totally reasonable. And I suppose the way that you've been handling it, the proof is in like where you've gotten so far. Like obviously we can still recognize that like the community is still fairly small right now, but it's still like, I'm sure that where you're probably at right now in terms of streaming is probably not something that you would have expected to have happened when you had gotten into it.
Oh God, no. I had no expectations. That's the thing, is I had none.
Yeah.
I had no expectations of growth, no expectations of success. I had no expectations of failure. I genuinely had no expectations. I was like, put it out there. I'm fine with streaming to nobody. I'm fine with streaming to everybody. There are times where I haven't had that many like dead streams. I have not had that many, which I'm super fortunate for. I've had like a handful of streams where it was maybe like three viewers. And I was just kind of I would yap to myself. I would just be like, oh man, this really made me upset, or I could have done that better, or done this better in that game. And it's fine. I was gonna be gaming anyway, so it's just me doing what I was gonna do anyways.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfectly fine. So yeah.
No, I like that. I was gonna ask you this the other day, but then I was like, this has literally nothing to do with the conversation that was happening at hand during the stream. What was the actual number that you hit in terms of your top 500 in Overwatch?
204.
204.
That's my peak.
Nice.
I've hit top 500 twice. I've hit 204 and I've hit 326.
Nice.
On 2 separate occasions. My 204 accomplishment was much more credible because this is not to dismiss anyone who's gotten top 500 in the recent seasons. If you hit top 500, you hit top 500. You put in that grind, you put in that work. Appreciate yourself. You did good. But it was I was in GM. I was in GM when I got that top 500. I was in GM too. My second top 500 was not in GM. It was in Masters. Which I guess is the new GM for Overwatch right now because of the rank resets. But I felt much more confident in that first accomplishment because I actually was trying to hit top 500. Top 500. I was grinding for it. It was my New Year's resolution for that year was to hit top 500. And I put in a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of studying, a lot of practice, and it was sweaty. It was super sweaty.
God, I can't even fucking imagine.
I kept getting put against people who get paid to play this game, and I was like, I just got off work, bro. I ain't built for this, but I accomplished it. I was happy with myself, and yeah, so yeah, 204 is my peak, but I have also hit 326.
Nice. Okay, so I guess we know that you had specified this earlier that you had started off playing the game in silver in general. So like anybody who knows anything about the Overwatch ranked system, you understand how high of a climb you have to get to make that happen. But how long did that actually like take you in terms of like seasons or in terms of like I don't know, like years, if it was like across multiple years of playing the game or whatever. And like, what were some of the important things that you learned that you think helped to get to that point?
Okay, so I've been playing Overwatch for about 7 or 8 years. I was in silver, and then I think it took me like maybe like a year and some change to get to diamond, but I was playing on a Lenovo laptop that capped at 30 FPS.
Dog was playing at the console experience.
Yes, it's auto. Yes, and I played Ana too. I played Ana. I got to diamond on Ana on a Lenovo laptop that capped me at 30 FPS, and it wasn't a stable 30. I would stutter quite often. So I hit that, and then once I got a better PC, which I think on that Lenovo laptop, I peaked like mid diamond, which at the time was like 3,300. But then once I got a better PC, I was able to get into masters. And I guess I hit GM after, I would have to say, 4 years of playing. I hit GM for the first time after like 3 to 4 years of playing. And then it took me from there, we moved to Massachusetts for my girlfriend to pursue law school. And then I think when we were acclimating, I was still kind of like a GM Masters player. I was a GM Masters player. Then I transitioned to Valorant. Then after Valorant, I hit Diamond in Valorant. After Valorant, I came back when Overwatch 2 was announced. And Overwatch 2 was the game that I hit top 500 in. So I would say total for me to go from silver to top 500, it took me about 7 years. But if we're talking specifically just to go from silver to GM, in Overwatch 1, it took me about 4 years. So yeah, about 4 years. And that's why I said, I'm not a fast learner. I am not a fast learner by any means. I had every bit of knowledge I have was diligently sought out. There was no, I understand it now. It didn't just click for me one day. I had to diligently go look for information. I had to learn from people that were better for me. I watched a lot of ML7, looking at his thought process, looking at the way he played the game. Why did he throw that nade? Why did he use that sleeve? Why did he use nano there? Ooh, that's not a person that I typically would think is a good nano target. Why did he nano that person? Did that person get value with that nano? Yes or no? If no, why not? If yes, why yes? It was a lot of intentional and deliberate thought. And to answer your question of like, what are some of the things I learned on the way in my climb? Was that Overwatch is a game of like, I guess I had to like simplify it. It is a game of like, it's like taking a shower, right? It's just like taking a shower. It's at least Overwatch ranked at least. You're trying to find the perfect balance between pressure, output, and safety. And if you get really, really good at understanding and figuring out how aggressive you can be without dying in any given game, you'll do fine. You'll do fine. Like against certain compositions as Ana, I can play super aggressive because there's not much threat to me. For example, if they're playing like Ramatra, Cassidy, May, Lucio, Bap. That is a composition that poses little to no threat to me. I can look for offensive nades against that composition. I can put out poke against that composition. I can do a lot of things. I can use my cooldowns very freely against that composition. Versus if they were playing something like Tracer, Genji, Ball, okay, I have to hold my cooldowns, or something like Widow, Hanzo, I can't peek or put out as much poke. Understanding and identifying how aggressive I'm allowed to be without dying is really genuinely what helps me climb. Just every single game is like, what can kill me? What can I get away with? What can kill me? What can I get away with? What can kill me? What can I get away with? And just really just building on that and getting better at that from game to game to game to game to game with how that 4 years was spent getting to GM.
I see. Right. Yeah. And there's one thing that I keep seeing a lot right now, which is that like stop paying attention to the scoreboard in terms of figuring out if you're actually doing good. Because a lot of people are like just padding their stats and they're just, pumping numbers into stuff, but not actually making any impact. The only stat you really should be caring about is how frequently you're dying. So it seems like you almost start at that level of like, first I need to make sure I don't die all the time. So I can continue making my output high. And then you think more critically into it and you figure out, okay, now that I'm spending all this time not dying, what can I do with it? And what are the things that can then, like, what are the things that will then allow me the sweet release of death?
I agree. Yes. And there are, like, the thing is also the stats that the game gives you are terrible. Overwatch has a terrible stat system. It's horrible. It's really, really bad. I made my own stats. Death was the only one that I really kept up with for Overwatch, but even then, there are deaths that people aren't looking at because there are times where you almost die. Let's say you almost die, but a teammate bailed you out or the enemy just kind of fumbled. That is still a death. I still counted that as a death. I would like, okay, I almost just died. How do I make sure that I don't end up in a tough spot like that again? Because in Overwatch, that can quite literally lose your team a fight. Like, for example, let's say you're playing Cassidy. You put yourself in a tough spot. Because you put yourself in a tough spot, your character has to Suzu you. And because your character had to Suzu you, the enemy Junker Queen now has a free ult. And now it gets your tank and your other DPS killed. You just got your other tank, and you just got your tank and your other DPS killed. The Cassidy. As a Cassidy, you just got your tank and your other DPS killed. Because you were in a compromising position and made your character have to Suzu you. Like I also worked to avoid doing stuff like that. Other stats I looked at was my nade value percentage. I would count my nades per game and see how many of my nades got value. I would do things like, okay, that round I threw 10 nades. What percentage of those nades got value? Okay, only 3 out of my 10 nades got value. I want to push that up to 50%. Okay, I'm at 50% of my nades getting value on average. I want to push it up to 70% of my nades on average getting value, etc. And same thing with sleep, same thing with nanos, the whole 9 yards. Everything was percentages of value. What I need to increase the percentage of my abilities and my utility that is getting value. Those are the type of stats that I would say people should focus on, and not just like KD, damage, healing, stuff like that is eh.
Exactly. And it sounds like from the way that you tend to learn and from like the way that we've helped, the way I'm speaking for everybody in the Twitch chat here. I am the monolith. If you have any questions or concerns, DM me directly. No. It seems like a lot of that learning process is also like obviously having to then retroactively go in and look at those, like look at the replays specifically and say, okay, with these ideas that I have in mind of like what value this character brings and what is a threat to them, looking at this match, what exactly happened here? Like, how many of these nades that I threw actually ended up doing something? How many times did I have somebody jumping on my back and I wasn't able to keep myself safe and somebody had to waste a cooldown and yada, whatever.
Yeah. It was a lot of VOD review. I did get better at doing more active VOD reviewing, which I think is much more accessible to people because the active physically sitting down and reviewing your games is a very boring thing. It's boring. People don't like doing it, and I understand that. Active VOD review is the next best thing you can do, which is just in your game, reflect on it. Be more present, which actually helps. Actually, it plays into the deliberate practice aspect of what I advocate. If you're playing the game very deliberately and paying attention and staying in the present and not zoning out, it encourages active VOD review because you're mentally present. So when you die, you know why you died. Because usually what happens is people autopilot, and then when they die, it takes them out of their autopilot, and they're like, what happened? How did I die there? And then it's like, oh, okay. You die because you're in a bad position. But if you're with playing actively and deliberately, you can pay attention and you can follow the flow of the fight, and you realize, okay, my tank got naded, had to give space. Because he had to give space, that Hanzo was able to climb over that wall on the right on, let's say, like Coliseo, take that space, and then headshot me. Okay, I understand that. Next time, I need to put some form of counter pressure, either put pressure out first so my RAM doesn't have to back up in the first place, or when my RAM feels like he has to back up, I need to put forth some type of counter pressure on the enemy tank so they don't win that space. So like, stuff like that. That's how you can think. If I can do that without having to look back on the game. I can do that literally while I'm respawning. Like literally while I'm respawning, I can think about that and arrive at that conclusion.
Right, yeah. Okay, cool.
So yeah.
Yeah, I like that. That's good. Let's this is fun. What do you think is like fundamentally different about Overwatch 2 compared to Overwatch 1, obviously like minus the entire 6th player, that makes generally ranking up in the game easier or harder?
I think what makes it easier is the freedom of map control that you can take. With the one less tank, it makes it a lot easier for DPS and supports to take angles because you don't have that other tank to contest you. A lot of snipers got really a lot more value. That's why Sojourn was so problematic. A lot of DPS get to off angle a lot more. You get more map freedom. You don't have to play as safe because you just have one less tank that can like just bulldozer you over. So that's something that makes it a little bit easier. But I also think it makes it harder because it's harder to live. because of everyone taking so many angles. I feel like if anyone's like anybody watching this, you could probably attest to having those games where you feel like you're surrounded. It feels like they're everywhere. You're just like, bro, what the heck? They have high ground, they have main, they have this off angle on the right, they're on the mega. Like you're just like, bro, how are they everywhere? And it's because you only have one tank, and it's one of the reasons why tanks complain so much about their role is because they're, their job obviously is to contest space, but they can only contest one part of the map at once.
Exactly.
Your diva goes to go contest that high ground, but that doesn't stop that tracing us on the off angle. Oh, your diva goes to contest like a soldier or a tracer on the off angle. Okay, well now that Cassidy gets to keep staying on the high ground. So it's like it both makes it easier because you can be the player to exploit that thing, but it also makes it harder because now you can be a victim of the fact that everyone gets to take more angles and be more aggressive.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say those are the things that are like as terms of gameplay, that is so fundamentally different. And the only other thing I would think about that is minor point is objective. Playing around the objective is a little bit different because, like I said before, you only have one tank. So sometimes you may have to pick a hero that can like kind of anchor point that isn't a tank. Because if your tank has to go lead to go contest someone on high ground, who's on the objective?
Yeah, like you have to functionally be like a part of that almost thought of a second tank.
Yeah, like so, like you have people have to figure out either through hero choice or like distance management or positioning or something how to manage. Okay, my tank is up there on that high ground. How do I keep their tank from just walking me off the point? And like it's hard, and it really, 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 really sucks a lot of the time. I personally don't like it. Because it forces certain compositions to be viable over other compositions. In certain situations, it just creates like a damned if you do, damned if you don't type of situation for the tank, where it's like, okay, if I stay on point, that soldier gets to rain down on my team forever. But then if I go contest that soldier, we lose point because their tank just walks my team off point. And it creates those scenarios where players can feel fundamentally helpless because even outside of the tank, you as a squishy you feel like, okay, like I want my tank to go contest that soldier, but then if he does, we lose point. But also, if my diva or my tank just stays point, then that soldier just kills us. It's like it literally is like it feels like a lose-lose situation a lot of time, and it just sucks. It just really, really sucks.
Yeah, I was actually curious if you this isn't to sound like I'm putting you on blast or anything. I was actually curious if because you and I had talked about this a couple of times, and I had asked for your footage to try and do my own video talking about like the 5v5 situation and just the complete lack of a tank, and I made like a whole 35-minute video on that thing. I was curious if you had skimmed through that or seen any portions of that at all.
So, was it on YouTube or TikTok?
It was on YouTube. It was on both, technically. I put one video I made on TikTok, and then an entirely separate video covering some of the same issues. It was on YouTube.
I saw the one on TikTok. I did not see the one on YouTube.
Okay, that's totally fine. The point is that was actually one of the really big points that I was making in that whole thing is like, oh wow, who would have guessed the tank role feels miserable because most of the characters in the game have fundamentally stayed the same, and the only thing that was keeping them in check was the fact that there was another tank that could go and do something about them. So now you have one guy who is responsible for taking over the roles of both tanks, and his team is constantly flaming him about it all the time because he can't do everything at once.
Yeah, it's it really, really sucks. Like a lot of times, a lot of team compositions and team play in ranked literally just feels like the tank is just a mecha or a kaiju that the other 4 people on their team is like piloting and is telling them what to do. It's like, go fight their kaiju, go fight their mecha. And you're like, okay. And it's like literally both teams are just waiting for the other tank to fall over before they do anything.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's such an unenjoyable experience. It's such a watered down and like unengaging form of Overwatch. I genuinely do not like it. I don't dislike Overwatch immensely. It's just the 5v5 format just has not been doing it for me in terms of enjoyability of the game. Because of the gameplay loop. The gameplay loop feels very boring. The same tanks end up being meta all the time because those are the tanks that are the most difficult to make fall over.
Yeah, exactly.
It's no coincidence. It's no coincidence that Orisa, Mauga, and Hog have been like the most like frequent meta rotations. And if any other tank gets into the meta rotation, it's because they're extremely difficult to kill. Diva, when she had her defense matrix buff, Ramantra, when his block was messed with by the armor bug. I don't know if you were aware there was an armor bug. Yeah. So like the only time other tanks make it into the meta is when they become exceptionally difficult to kill, or when JQ got her adrenaline rush buff and she had like a 2.5 times healing multiplier off her bleed. Like when only time a tank becomes meta in Overwatch 2 is when they're like exceptionally difficult to kill, and it's like that's because it's literally just a matter of which tank's going to fall over first, and it's such an unengaging gameplay loop. Yeah. So unengaging.
Yeah, I'd be curious one day to see like all of your concise thoughts on all that stuff. Like, obviously, it's really hard to put all of your thoughts into one concise thing. That's why it took me like, I don't know, probably 2-3 weeks to fully write up everything and try and take into account a bunch of different points, while not making it sound like I was just being a whiny little bitch the whole time. Because no matter what, if you complain about anything in the game, you're going to have people that are going to come in and they're going to assume the role that you play the most. They're going to assume the amount of time you play the game. They're going to assume the rank that you're in all the time. So I try getting some of that stuff out of the way early, and I was like, yeah, I've played the game at like, I haven't played the game at a crazy high level, but I have played the game at a very diverse set of levels because I also started the game in silver and managed to make it all the way up to like 3400 MMR in Overwatch 1, which was fine at the time, but it definitely wasn't through most skill of my own. It was through when Mercy got her rework but hadn't been nerfed yet. But I still...
Was it the two, like you could res and then Falcon get another res?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, it was during that time. But it's still like, I still play in like a mid-diamond level, and, I try to think critically about the game and all of these other things. And yeah, there are still some points about it that almost feel like I'm just being a whiny little bitch about it because I want to be able to play with a sixth player.
I mean, I get... two notes. Like, one, like, yeah, people are always going to complain about people complaining, and I think people. I'm not okay. I'm not like a huge capitalist person, but this is capitalism, and people are going to complain about the products and services that they consume. They have every right to, and that's fundamentally just how consumerism works. Yeah. Consumers express, like, someone saying they don't like 5v5 is no different than someone saying they don't like a burger from a certain restaurant. Like, I think people need to understand that when someone says, "Oh, I don't like 5v5," that's no different than them saying that they don't like McDonald's. Like, it's no different. They're consuming a service and or a product and then giving their opinion on said service and or product. Yeah. That's all it is. It's no deeper than that. Don't need to get butthurt about it. And on the point of like people constantly leveraging rank and accomplishments and accolades, because I didn't even want to make an accolade video on TikTok for me, because I don't think accolades matter that much. I think it's more so the substance of your argument and the foundational like perspective through which you view Overwatch is what matters most. Like, I'm like a mid-masters player. I am the same rank as like Spilo, who is he was a former like assistant coach for like a literal Overwatch League team. He is an incredibly knowledgeable coach and makes incredible content. Are we really going to say that because both me and him both have the same rank over equal? No, it doesn't matter. He's immensely more intelligent than I am in regards to Overwatch. He knows so much more than I am. Hell, there was another dude on TikTok by the name of Cuffy who is he was like a coach for one of the best teams in EU, Shikigami. He was the coach for one of the best teams, and he at one point, while being a professional coach, was in plat and diamond. Like, he was a plat or diamond. It was like, yeah, he was in like plat or diamond as a support player, and like, he was still coaching one of the best teams in EU. So it's just like, this whole like, it's disproven way too often that it just doesn't matter. And even in my profession as a personal trainer, I've coached people who have stepped on bodybuilding stages. Dude, I am not a very large person. A lot of people who coach bodybuilders are not very large people. They're nowhere near as large or as jacked as their clients. Like, this whole idea that you yourself have to be the best of the best to be able to coach or give information on something is so silly. It's so silly. Engage with the content of a person's argument rather than sitting here debating over who the argument is coming from.
Yeah.
I it's so frustrating.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought about the fact that, like, especially if we're talking about the context of like somebody teaching another person, we don't use how good are you at this thing to justify somebody teaching somebody else. If you have literally anything that you're more knowledgeable on than the person you are teaching, then you at least bring that level of value to it. Like, the immediate comparison that I was thinking about is the fact that, like, there was a guy who came into your chat the other day because I think it was P Shred who was like, I know a guy who works with music stuff. And of course, as soon as I heard music, my eyeballs popped out of their fucking sockets being like, oh, I want to talk with this guy about this. And I was like, because I'm always like a big fan of trying to find people who make music, especially if they're new, and being like, yeah, this is how I generally tend to approach these kinds of things. Not really as a means of teaching them, more so just giving them the confidence and the tools they need to know where to begin with it. And then when I was talking to that guy, he was like, I've been doing this for 16 years. And I was like, fuck, I'll shut up then. My bad. Like, I'm like, I started doing this because the pandemic happened, right? But I still wouldn't look upon myself. I would look at like the things that I have been able to do and the experiences that I've been able to learn from something, even only being here for, doing this for like 4 years, and still think that there's probably some level of something that I can use to give anybody to teach. I obviously don't need to target one specific person, but I'm like, here's a little tip and trick you can use if you want to do this kind of thing. And I would especially be annoyed if somebody came in and went, dog, clearly you do not know what you're talking about, because I've seen people who have been in this game for 20 years and they do it this way. And I go, okay, yeah, well, it achieves the same goal. Like, I don't know who you're trying to pick fights with right now.
Hey, people can be needlessly antagonistic about things like that. And funny enough, I find that while this lesson and this aspect of life can be taught in the gaming spaces, it applies so much to other aspects of life. Like, I find myself in a situation fairly similar where, like, I have, in my career field of being a personal trainer, I have been at it for about 4 years now. And I recently joined a gym where I'm the new guy. I'm the new guy. But I have been coaching for longer than most of the people there. But I still understand that even though I've been coaching longer than them, I still have stuff that I can learn about the procedural nature of that gym, how the client, what injuries different clients have, how different clients prefer to be coached, who different clients like to work out with. There are always going to be things that I can learn from other people, different ways to cue certain exercises. Like, I never will arrive at a point where I'm like, I have nothing to learn from this person. Now, of course, there are extremes and there are caveats where I'm like, okay, I'm not listening to this idiot. But on a more reasonable note, I feel like this idea that someone has to be insanely good at something to teach it is so elitist. And it's like so dismissive of the journey between incompetence to mastery. Like, the people in between those two destinations still have valid opinions, valid points to be made. Of course, and what matters most is the actual content of those points and arguments, rather than, once again, who they're coming from.
Yeah. I used to be a big proponent of that thing. There's a there's a line that I heard in an Eminem song a very long time ago. Not a very long time ago. Like, actually, no, it was probably like 6 years ago. So from my perspective, that's a fairly long time ago. Where I think this was like a song that he made in response to a bunch of people like trying to shit on the work that he does, despite the fact that, 20 years prior in the early 2000s, they were praising him for what he does for the hip hop space and whatever. And he just said, like, if you're going to critique me, you better at least be as good or better, something, whatever. And I used to be like a heavy person on that, where I'm like, I don't need all these random fucking people who have never touched a computer in their life trying to tell me how to do X, Y, and Z thing. But nowadays, I'm like, that just makes, like, in a lot of situations, that just makes you look like an asshole. And it's like, some person will come up to you and say something about the way that you do something from their very limited knowledge space. And as long as they're not being a dick about it, you can at least have, like, an efficacious conversation with them about it.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt at all. And the only way I'll dismiss a person's opinion is if the content of their opinion is, lacking. Like, for example, I remember having a dude talk to me about how he felt that Winston farms carry. Winston is a carry co-counter in Overwatch. And the content of his argument was just bad. He was like, well, Winston's leap is on a shorter cooldown than Kiri's TP. I'm like, Kiri can TP through walls. Kiri can completely break LOS of Winston. Kiri also has wall climb. She can play low ground, bait Winston to leap onto her, and then she can disengage from him without even having to use TP at all, which completely negates the content of your argument, that being the cooldown disparity. And, like, he ended up deleting his comment. So so it's just like, that wasn't me being like, oh, this low rank pleb doesn't know what he's talking about. This is being like, hey, I'm hearing your argument, and here's why your argument falls short.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, like, I feel that those are the types of engagements we should be having with people, rather than being like, oh, you're low rank, shut up. Like, it's just like, bro, it's just like so point, because like you've seen it in my comments, like, if people say, what rank are you? Oh, this guy must be silver. What is this, bronze? And it's like, even if it was, what about what I'm saying is actually wrong, though?
Yeah.
Even if I could be like a fucking person who's never made out of bronze, but what about what I'm saying is wrong? But I'm trying to think. I think my biggest frustration, though, with a lot of people in the internet space has been the fact that, like, people are so pointless and antagonistic over things they disagree about, when they could A, just scroll, or B, just be more respectful in their disagreements. But they're going out of their way to be mean and antagonistic, which makes you think that they're trolls. But at the same time, like, what if they're not a troll and they're just mean?
Yeah, that is also a distinct possibility. Yeah, I used to. It's funny. I was also complaining about that exact same thing when I was. How old would I have been? Like 13 or 14, and I was complaining about that exact same thing. And honestly, I don't even think it wasn't even coming from anything anybody had said to me. I think it was just that I would see, like, content coming from people who I really respect, and a bunch of people would just go in and just act all elitist or just generally mean about it. Not even like, it's not even like rudely critiquing anything about it. They're just like, this guy needs to kill himself. And I go, why are you so, why are you so mean on the internet? Like, dog, you could just move on with your day.
Yeah, it's just not. It's not necessary to any degree. Like, I just don't. I've scrolled across videos I haven't agreed with, but bro, there's plenty of videos I don't fucking agree with. Like plenty.
Yeah.
There's many times I'm like, oh yeah, I think that's a stupid take, or oh, I really don't. That really doesn't make much sense to me, and I just fucking keep it moving.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm like I'm a person when I play Overwatch, I like get frustrated at the way people play, and I get frustrated at random things because that's just the nature of who I am. I'm trying to work on it, whatever. But I'll do that, and then in the same breath, I'll also go and call out one of our teammates because they went out of their way to type something to my teammate, to somebody saying how like terrible they are at the game and they need to uninstall. And I'm like, I at least kept it to myself.
Yeah. Like I feel like also that's like another distinction that people like whenever I address someone's toxicity or speak on someone's toxicity or whenever anyone does, a big defense for that level of toxicity is always, oh well, people aren't allowed to be mad. I'm like, you're allowed to be angry, you're allowed to experience whatever emotions you feel. It is how you choose to express them. Like if you're upset at someone's performance in your game, that's fine, that's fair, whatever. But if you then decide to call them a slur, that's the problem.
Yeah.
That's the issue. No one cares that you're mad about it. Be mad, be angry, be upset, whatever. You're human. It's fine. But just like there's a healthy way to express it, and there's a not healthy way to express it. And that's what we're critiquing: your expression of your emotions, not the existence of them in the first place. And I think a lot of people just don't get that. They feel like you're telling them that they're not allowed to be angry. And I'm like, no one is telling you that you're not allowed to be angry. No one is telling you that you can't participate in banter. You're just crossing a very clear line.
Yeah. Like I'm not necessarily always the biggest fan of treat people the way that you want to be treated, because I think there are some people who just don't take that into account and are like, well, I don't care how people treat me because I'm not like a snowflake, and use that as an excuse for like, I wouldn't care if somebody did that to me, so I am fine doing that to somebody else. I'm just a big fan of like, don't be an asshole to people if you're not an asshole. Like,
yeah. I mean, also I feel like in gaming spaces, is being an asshole is like such an acceptable character trait in a lot of gaming spaces. Like there's so many like, and I don't even mean to like throw shade at people, but like there are so many content creators that their whole a big portion of their content is them being very rude and insufferable people.
Yeah.
It is marketable. It is very marketable in gaming spaces to be a very rude and unkind person. And I think for a lot of people, you tell someone, hey, don't be an asshole if you're not an asshole. But I am an asshole. I am one. They would be happily admit that they're not a good person. They think it's cool to be mean to people because they see someone can garner a crap ton of views and a crap ton of revenue off of being such a horrible person.
Yeah.
And when I say horrible person, I'm not saying like the scum of the earth. I'm just saying within the context of gaming, not being a good person.
Yeah, generally being one of those people that makes gaming, which is supposed to be a hobby enjoyed by many, an unenjoyable situation for people.
Yeah, exactly. And like, you're ruining the fun for others. Yeah.
Yeah, and we could totally get into this whole big thing that I know you were on like an arc having to try and argue this with people, but especially if you're like a group a group of people that does not make up the majority of that space, then it's like then it just makes the experience that much less enjoyable for those people, because there's just tons of people who are one mean in the gaming space and are perfectly fine with expressing that, but then two, I guess fundamentally believe that certain groups don't belong in there, and so they once again don't have any issues with just being overtly upset with them and being mean to them. And a lot of the internet is just like, oh yeah, this is fine.
Yeah, it's a very odd perspective. Like the whole, like you said, you talked about the whole like snowflake thing. People think, oh, you're a snowflake, you're a snowflake. I don't get it. I don't understand it from like just a genuine like logic perspective, because even in real life, people verbally respond to being disrespected. Like if I walk up to a guy and say, yo, you're a dumb bitch, he's going to be like, what'd you just call me? What'd you just call me? What'd you just call me, bro? What'd you just call me, bro? And he's going to get verbally aggressive with me.
Yeah.
He's going to, or at the very least be upset with me about it. Like, and like I would never do that. Obviously, I don't call people that at all. I'm just using it for the sake of example. But like, I don't understand this whole, oh, you're soft. Oh, you're soft. And I'm like, okay, so you just verbally disrespected a person and then they told you to stop verbally disrespecting them and they're soft? That's so weird to me. I don't know where that comes from. Sometimes I can tell where an argument comes from. I don't get where they're coming from with that argument. I genuinely don't. I can't wrap my head around it. I physically can't.
I think that comes from a place of like those kinds of people who call other people snowflakes are the exact type that have never been properly taught on what it means to have a healthy outlet for their emotions. And so like they get mad at something and their response is to call somebody something mean and be an asshole, and they think that that's like fine. And if they see somebody being more reasonable about the way that something negative happened to them, they're like, "Oh, you're just a little bitch," because clearly the way that I react to this is the only proper way, because it's the only way to understand. But I don't know.
That could definitely be it. That can definitely. I've just struggled for a while now to like wrap my head around it, because I'm like, that person is just setting a boundary like anybody would. Anybody would set a boundary and say, "Hey, I'm not going to let you talk to me that kind of way. Hey, stop talking to me that way. Hey, watch how you speak to me." Or, "Hey, chill out, leave me alone." Those are perfectly fine responses to someone being verbally mean to you. But for some reason in gaming spaces, that's deemed soft, and I don't get it. I really don't comprehend it.
Yeah, I think rage has just been used too often as a like. I think there's a thing. There's like a tweet that I have retweeted on my page, which it said just like being angry and being toxic in spaces has just become way too normal of an emotion. Like it hasn't become normalized where we assume like everybody's going to behave that way. But if somebody does behave that way, people just don't seem to care that much about it, which is obviously what was spoken about earlier. But I think the whole thought is that like rage has become such a normalized thing in the gaming space that people who behave that way just don't get, they don't get the proper like talking down about it. Like people aren't telling them, "Hey, you need to stop doing that. You need to stop behaving that way," because it's kind of like that toxic cycle where you try and explain it to them and they're not going to listen to you, and they're just going to keep behaving the way that they behave. And then one day that level is going to like seep into other people, and then those people are going to behave that way, and so on and so forth, or something. I don't know.
I agree. I mean, also there are, I've experienced this personally. There are a number of people who kind of have no faith in people becoming better people. I remember there was a person that I am still associated with now who used to be rather toxic. He used to be a rather toxic person. He used to say some pretty toxic things from time to time. And I spoke to him about it. I said, "Hey, I might not want to say that stuff. People are going to make assumptions of you that I don't think you wanted to make. People are going to think things of you that you probably don't want them to think. You should probably not talk like that. And also those things are harmful. They hurt people. This could be taken as this, yada, yada, yada." And he gradually modified his behavior. His behavior changed, and he ultimately did become a much more respectful and kind person. However, there were a lot of people who felt that I was wasting my time, and I should not have even called him out on it in that way in the first place. They pretty much incentivized me to just cut him off outright, not even try to tell him that what he was doing was wrong, and that people like that are just a waste of time. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? It doesn't hurt to tell the guy, "Hey man, stop talking to me that way." Like you said, like, "Hey, stop talking to people that way." And I feel like people like that help people remain toxic because they refuse to actually tell them, "Stop talking like that."
Yeah,
stop talking to people that way.
God, there's a whole massive rabbit hole that I could go down regarding this, and I don't even want to because oh fucking God. I am so sick of people who are afraid of the relationships that they hold with other people breaking. They're afraid of those relationships breaking. And so as a result, they won't call them out on doing bad things. Because I've had plenty of people in my life who have behaved in certain ways that I did not like, and I asked them to fix it, and I maybe saw some fix, and then I would see them go right back down into it. And after having multiple discussions with these people, I'm like, I can't handle the way that you're behaving right now, especially because of the fact that like some of that behavior would then get thrown back towards me, which feels even worse. But like,
yeah,
situations like that, that's where I'm like, okay, like I see exactly where you're coming from, which is that many people, the statistical majority of people can be redeemed from certain bad things that they do, and to immediately try and just remove them from the equation because you don't want to have to go through the effort of trying to help them become a better person is cowardly. However, I also think if you're not going to call people out on the way that they behave and you're going to continue to allow that behavior to happen, even while still remaining in some sort of friendship with them, is also cowardly. Because why are you being friends with a person who is actively behaving in a terrible way Would you want to be friends with somebody who just is fine with calling people slurs out in the street or on a video game or whatever? Like, are you
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
serious?
yeah. It's like for me, I myself, I've had several people that I've had to talk to. I have 4 younger brothers. I've had to talk to them about behavior that isn't acceptable. I've had to talk to friends about behavior that isn't acceptable. I've had to been told that certain behavior wasn't acceptable. I remember growing up. I grew up with some not so good male role models, and I had some pretty unhealthy ways of expressing my anger. I would shut down emotionally. I would just not talk. If I got mad, I would just go silent. Just wouldn't talk. Right? I would just shut myself off, and I was told, "Hey, that's just not a really good, healthy way to handle things. You need to do something different, right?" But if people had not even, if people would have said, "I'll just let him be, leave him lie, who cares," right? I would probably still be doing that to this day. But it's because people said, "You know what? I feel like this person could potentially stop doing those types of things," and now I don't. I'm much more communicative. I'm much more open with asking for help from people. That was something I was really, really bad at. I would never ask for help. You would never catch me dead asking for help. I would rather suffer and burn alive than ask for somebody to put me out. I was terrible at it, but it was only when people told me, "Hey, dude, that's not a really good way to navigate life. It's not really good. You should probably fix that." That I really started to like put in work and effort into becoming a better person and becoming a more healthy mentally and emotionally healthier person. And I wouldn't have done that without encouragement and support from others. And so I generally just try to pay that forward. Of course, with caveats, I'm not going to sit here and be like, a person who does absolutely horrible, deplorable things is like redeemable, but within reason, I try to pay it forward.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, that's a conversation
So
for
yeah,
another day. Somehow this is going to come up in a conversation with somebody else way down the line, and then you're going to hear me go. The whole podcast, it's going to be a 3-hour episode, and an hour and a half it's going to be dedicated to that. It's going to be ridiculous. No. I'm going to do a pivot. Oh, God, I bashed my mic. I'm going to do a pivot. Obviously, you've been posting a lot of art stuff, and I've been like a person who's kind of been into art for a while, but only from the perspective of like, I like seeing people go through the process, but because I don't have a vision much myself, I don't get into it myself, even though I would like to. But I'm curious for you specifically, like which came first in like, at least for the art that you're doing now and the stuff that we're seeing on like TikTok and whatnot, which came first? Was it your natural love for art and, trying to put things from vision onto paper or put things that already exist into your own style? Or if it came more in interest of like how artists already do things in like, say, comic book paneling and manga paneling and stuff like that?
Definitely the latter. I consumed art, grew to love it, the way it was made, the way it was done, the way it looked, and that ultimately made me want to recreate it. And it wasn't until within the past 2 to 3 years that I actually started to take a more formal approach to learning art, and I actually started to like sit down and do art studies and stuff like that. So it was definitely more so just creative inspiration at first, before I got really big into the actual technical things about art that I needed to learn, like anatomy, the skeleton, perspective, form, line, shape, texture, values, and stuff like that.
Okay, yeah, that's fun. That's fun. I like that a lot. I like when people start with vibes when they get into something more than anything, right? There are certain things that I kind of fundamentally believe in, which is like, there are certain things in life that you can only get so far on vibes, because then eventually you're going to get stuck in a creative rut without the technical understanding of how to actually get to a vision that you want. So I'm curious, like, how much you believe in that fundamental idea from what you were doing, because obviously you said you started with vibes and then you were like, okay, I want to get a more technical understanding of what's actually going on in the event that like you do want to be creative and you want to make your own things and you want to be able to do something without being stuck for hours and hours until suddenly that the like a light bulb turns on effectively. Like how much do you think how much do you think understanding the technicalities and the formal process of creating art actually, like, how much do you think it should actually matter to people?
I think it should matter less than some people say, more than other people say. Which I think is a pretty cliche way to answer it, but there are some people that are absolutely obsessed with adhering to realism and the most formal of formal forms of art. And I owe it to people like Tatsuki Fujimoto, Gege Akutami, Togashi, the create like all those people are the creators like Chainsaw Man, JJK, Hunter x Hunter, and they show the ways in which you don't have to have things that are perfect, and art is more than anything. It is a language. art is a language, and if what you are trying to communicate is communicated, then it is fine. And just like with any language, there's a baseline level of competence you need to have to be able to communicate. But you don't need to be the best at it. You don't need to be a master linguist. You don't have to be a master artist. You don't have to have like the most realistic art style. You don't have to have the deepest, most thorough understanding of things. But like you said before, you will find yourself being very limited in what you can creatively make if you do not have a foundation. And I do think people should try to get a foundation. I think I just disagree with some people as to how much knowledge constitutes a foundation. I think some people think a foundation is a lot more information than it is, and other people think a foundation isn't necessary at all, and I wouldn't agree with either. But like I said, from those artists that I've named, I look at their art and it isn't always anatomically correct. It isn't always doesn't always make sense. Like I remember Tatsuki Fujimoto, I own some of the copies of his volume, and some of the panels, the people's shoes are just boxes. They're shaped like straight rectangles. They're not shoe-like in any capacity. They're just straight rectangles. The way he draws the head from certain angles does not give any. It can look very flat at times. It doesn't give indication to form of the jawline. But the things are where. But you know what it is. It's the language. It communicates what he wants it to communicate, and you can tell what it is, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, and
that's probably all that matters.
And there's probably a good chance that a lot of people might not. Like the shoes, for example, there's a very good chance that people aren't going to ever pay attention to the shoes. They go, I've seen this character the last 100 pages, and I'm pretty sure they have shoes on. And that's it.
Yeah, so like composition also helps a lot with that, like drawing the reader's focus to certain things. So you can like, obviously the things that you're drawing their focus to is more detailed than the thing that you're not drawing their focus to. And things like that matter, and like how to abuse that is something I also learned. I don't have to draw every single aspect of my image to be super, super detailed, because I can just use composition to make them look at one place and be lazy somewhere else.
Right.
But more or less to like simplify the answer, I think that having a foundational knowledge of the like formal way of doing something is important. However, understand that the foundational skills are simpler than you think, and you don't need to master the foundation, like the fundamentals, to make good stuff. Right. You don't have to master them. You need more than anything just an awareness and a baseline understanding of them. Yeah,
just enough to actually help you accomplish whatever you're trying to accomplish, essentially.
Yeah.
And then anything from that point is more just out of like a love for understanding the knowledge of it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. I think there are a lot of people like that love just they're in love not with I don't want to say they're not in love with creating art. They are, but they're also in love with how art is created. And so those are the people that really, really, really push the master the fundamentals types of thing, and they look at the master studies of like some of the greatest artists to ever live, like the really, really talented, gifted artists, not even talented, but like very, 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 very strong artists, and they're like, this is what you need to be aspiring for. I don't want none of that. I don't want none of that. I don't want none of that. It doesn't appeal to me. I don't want to be the next Yusuke Murata. I'm not trying to make the next Vagabond. I don't really care to be a master at art. Art, for me at least, is a medium through which I want to tell stories. And that as long as I can, like I said, language. As long as I can use art as a part of the words I want to use to tell my story, to tell the story that I want to tell, that is it. If I can communicate it, I will communicate it. Of course, there will be a level of like quality that I want to achieve. I think every artist has that internal like, oh, I don't like the way that looks, erase. Oh, I don't like the way that looks, erase. But I just want to be able to communicate the stories that I want to communicate. And if I can communicate that through my art, then I'm happy. Then I'm fine.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, I like that. I guess because I specifically mentioned the thing about like usually people are going to get caught in a creative rut until they have some baseline understanding of the fundamentals of the thing that they're making. What are some of the challenges that you find yourself facing when trying to be truly creative, whether that be redesigning an already existing anime character and giving them a unique cultural spin, like when you were turning a bunch of anime characters black for a little bit, or just creating your own characters for like this hypothetical comic that you'd be wanting to create? Like what gets in your way?
Understanding of perspective is probably the hardest thing. Form and perspective, making things look three-dimensional on a 2D surface, as well as drawing things from certain angles on a 2D surface, is exceptionally difficult. Foreshortening gets in the way, or like making things that are further away look smaller, things that are closer look bigger. Like for example, if I wanted to draw someone with their arm pointed straight out and their finger pointing at like the person looking at the image, being able to accurately draw that is something that is exceptionally difficult. It's super hard. Another thing would be in terms of like designing characters, with character design, like certain how to like simplify certain hair textures and certain hairstyles. Because obviously, I'm not a big part of art is simplification. You don't want to draw everything that you see. You want to take what you see, simplify it, and break it down. And how to simplify some of those like black hairstyles is something that I learned. I'm still learning as I practice, but I will say that the way that I overcome these challenges is A, through practice, and B, I have an artist for my comic book. She does most of the coloring, line art, and the finished character design. Essentially, what I do is I do storyboarding, writing the story, and I put forth the original character designs towards her. But like I said, I'm nowhere near as good as character design as she is. She went to school for this stuff.
Yeah.
And so what she does is if you go to, if anybody, I'm trying to think. I think it's on my TikTok. My profile picture on my TikTok, that's my comic book character. I gave her a baseline drawing, just a pencil drawing. She made that digital art. She made that. And what she does is she pretty much makes all of the digital art for my comic. I do any traditional storyboarding and like script writing. I have like an entire Word document filled with the entire script for the first arc of my story so far. And then for storyboarding, I put all my storyboards on paper, and then I usually scan it and send it to her for her to like work that out and put in the details of it. That's essentially how most of the process for for us making the comic works. We have not like published anything yet, obviously, because it's a very long process.
Right. Yeah. But as expected.
But yeah. So ultimately, that's how I overcome these challenges by A, just really grinding my fundamentals and really understanding what it is that I'm struggling with, and B, like I said before, I've learned to ask for help. I understand that sometimes I'm not going to be able to do all this by myself. I would not be able to do all this by myself. She's immensely helpful. She is a godsend for me. And yeah, so yeah, that's how I overcome those challenges mostly.
Okay, that's fair. This, ironically, as a person who doesn't know anything about art, perspective always seems like one of those things that would be fucking impossible for me to understand. Even though I did actually I took two art classes between art classes between my junior high and my high school years. And one of the things I had to learn in junior high was the perspective thing. And that very like rudimentary, like have a focal point and then try and draw all of the lines to like the sharp angles and corners as they relate to the line, or as they relate to like the focus point dot that you put on the paper or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the thing I think about a lot. And I look at the way that certain things are paneled, and I'm like proportions are already a hard thing for me to understand. And then you take proportions and you try and make them also relative to the perspective. And I'm like,
oh yeah.
I'm like, this would give me a headache, but that's also why I'm not an artist. That's why I'm the music guy, not the art guy.
It's definitely frustrating. Art is definitely one of those things that's like really, really frustrating, but it is rewarding because like unlike things like Overwatch, there tends to be a fairly decent positive feedback loop where if you do things correctly, the art turns out correctly. So if I do a good job of understanding the form and the perspective and how to manipulate the proportions of my subject to make it look like a 3D image, it will look good. Whereas for something like, let's say like Overwatch, I could play a game very well and lose. So I enjoy art from that perspective of you tend to get what you put in.
Yeah, feedback loop is a perfect way to think about that, because I just think about I think about the fact of like, this is kind of an extreme example, but like when I get stuck in like a musical rut, like I got a piano plugin a few months ago, and I was like, oh man, this is such a great piano plugin, and the proof is in the fact that there's this album that I'm a really big fan of, and I've watched the same video of this guy making this music multiple times because I'm just enamored with it. Finally gave it and got the plugin and was stuck for like 3 weeks being like, I don't know what to make. And then I finally made something that was catchy, and I was like, oh, we are so back. And then I kept continuing, and now I've just continued on making a bunch of new stuff. So like, yeah, feedback loop is also a great way of like, feedback loop, even on the smallest level of like, this thing I've been working on for a little while has finally turned out proper. This hand that I drew finally looks proper. That's good enough of a feedback loop for you to want to keep going and keep practicing and keep learning and shit.
I will say this though, like with art, there is the issue, even with a good feedback loop, your brain sometimes hates you, and there'll be times
it
where
happens.
yes, it's just like you'll make art and it'll sometimes just never ever look good. Like you'll never be happy with it. And that's one of the reasons why I really like the artists that I listed. Because you look at their art and you can tell that you can tell like, hey, they weren't obsessed with perfection. They weren't obsessed with this looking clean. They weren't obsessed with this looking neat. They obviously had deadlines and they met their deadline. And you know what?
It looks good.
I'm going to give myself a deadline.
Ooh, deadline.
I'm going to time myself. Okay, I have 3 minutes to draw this pose. I have 1 minute to draw this pose. I have 30 seconds to draw this pose. That's it. That's all I'm going to give myself. I'm not going over it. Even if I don't finish it, I'm stopping at 30 seconds. Stopping. Done. All right. Not doing it. Boom. All right. I'm not going to give myself endless amounts of time to do this. I even went at one point practice art with a pen so I could not erase.
Ooh.
So I had to commit to any decisions that I made with my pen.
Yeah.
So that I would be less obsessive over making every little line perfect. I don't have to like every single line in my drawing. I don't have to feel like every single one is a perfect width or thickness or length or whatever. I don't have to. Is once again, communication is language. As long as it communicates what I wanted it to communicate, it's fine.
Yeah, exactly. I like that.
So yeah.
If we're talking about if we're talking about kind of, I guess creativity isn't the right word, but if we're talking about output as it pertains to stuff that gets put out on the internet, what are some challenges that you face when deciding like the type of content that you want to actually put out on your TikTok or eventually probably towards your YouTube stuff, whether that be here are some art studies that I did, here are some hand poses that I did for practice, or like here's this random Overwatch thing that I think will spark discussion about a thing. Like, how do you decide what you want to go up on there?
Educational stuff is what I want to lean towards primarily. If I think there's something of value to be taught, because I want to add value. I want videos to add value to people's lives to some degree. If for art stuff, if it can be used either as a reference or inspiration. It's typically what art stuff was. Like I remember I made a post the other day saying, showing one of my more proud art pieces, and it was like, OMG, you're so talented, had it written over it, and then it cuts to a black page and it's like talented, and then it showed how all my art used to look, and to show people that even the people on this that you come across that make really great art, they used to make not so great art.
Yeah, exactly.
And I find that to be valuable. Or if it's like hand or art studies, because people like don't know how to draw hands. Hands suck. Hands are pretty hard to draw. So hand studies, anatomy studies, things that people typically want to be able to draw but struggle with. And then for Overwatch stuff, it's usually tackling misconceptions, myths, problematic viewpoints that people might have in the ranked settings. Because I primarily target my content towards ranked players. I don't really care for the quick play warriors. Nothing against them. I just don't really.
That's not what your content is for. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not for them. But it's usually, even with Overwatch, is educational stuff. Like, hey, you think this, stop and think this other thing instead. Like, oh, you think it's a tank's job to just stand on the front line and do nothing but, lock lips with the other tank. That's wrong. Here's what you need to be thinking instead. Or, hey, you think a support's job is only to be a mobile health pack for you. That's wrong. Here's what their jobs are instead. Things like that. Really just trying to break certain bad habits. Essentially what I'm trying to, especially as moving forward, it's identifying like a bad habit or misconception within the community and then replacing it with a good way of thinking. Be like, hey, don't think this instead. Because I feel like if I do only one or the other, if I do like don't think this, it comes off as like you talked about earlier about sounding like a whine, like you're whining. It just makes you come off as like you're complaining, like, oh, you're just hating on people for doing stuff. And then if I just do like, hey, do this more, I find that it doesn't override the bad habits as much. It doesn't get people to realize that, hey, the thing that I am telling you to do exists at odds with the thing that you are already doing. You need to stop doing that first.
Right. Like putting manifesting the thought in their brain to then allow them to be changed by whatever the thing is they should be doing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right.
So that's more or less. So essentially for my content, I want it to be educational and to add value to people's lives. And I think this is something that people would benefit from learning, benefit from knowing, or think would want to know or want to learn? Yes or no? Yes. All right, I make the content. And I don't really care if it does well or not. I don't care if it pops off. Even if like only a handful of people see it, at least it's out there.
Yeah. Do you ever think that any of the content that you're making, this is primarily for your art stuff, do you ever think that any of that is also a bit of like a... what's the word? I guess as a bit of like I feel really good about how this thing turned out, so I just want a place to go out and put it. Because that's like most of the TikToks that I post are just me complaining about politics because of course I do. But occasionally I've been trying to get more into this where I'm posting little snippets of like the music that I've been working on. And a part of it is it's like, it just feels really good. Like as I was explaining earlier, when I finally get out of a rut and I'm like, oh, this thing I think turned out really great. I'm just going to go post it somewhere and just, and it just kind of feels good to know that it's out there. And maybe some people will also think that it's fairly good. Especially because like for me, I don't really have that feedback loop of like, look at how many hours I had to go through in order to get this thing to turn out proper. Not necessarily. It's like, it's not look at these things that I used to make and look at how much better they are than what I used to do through practice and trial and tribulation and learning and whatever. Some of it, I'm just using it as like, I feel good that I made this. And so I want other people to see. Do you ever have those moments with your stuff?
Oh, absolutely. I think I think it's necessary to do that because like I said earlier, your brain sometimes hates you, and sometimes you need someone else's brain to convince your brain that it's stupid for hating you. There are times where I'm not fully happy with art, or I'm thinking like, I think this looks all right. Or there are times where I think my art looks really good. I post it and I get reaffirmed that it is good. I do try to shy away from it somewhat on TikTok. It has nothing to do with like with general art stuff. It just has to do with TikTok, because if I post something that I think looks really, really good, I think, oh my God, I'm so happy that I'm so proud of myself for that. And I post it with that in mind to like show off. And then the TikTok algorithm just doesn't do me service. It can kind of make your confidence crash. Because like you're like, oh, I did so good at this. I did so good making this. You post it and then TikTok gives you like 10 likes.
You're like, go fuck myself.
Yeah, so like I do it sometimes definitely, but I try to also just like, I try to also keep myself like grounded and like, all right, now TikTok might screw you over now, so like don't get your hopes up too high.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
So, yeah.
And honestly, I think if I'm looking for like a little bit of gratification for like the things that I create, TikTok isn't the place that I go for those, because like, I mean, especially because at this point, I think TikTok has just classified me as a dude who sits in his car and complains all day. And so that's usually what I mean. Literally, like that song that I posted on TikTok, I was like, oh wow, this is easily one of the most different pieces of music that I've ever made before, and it got like 250 views, and I was like, okay, not as to be expected. It kind of got caught in the rut. A couple of months ago, I stitched this video of this woman being like, I force my kids to come with church to me on Wednesdays. They don't like it, but I don't care. And I responded basically being like, yeah, so you're the self-aware parent who doesn't like their kids and their kids don't like you, and you're okay with that. And you wonder why kids of my generation, like why people of my generation don't like their parents. And that got like 8,000 views. And I'm like, okay, thanks.
I do also find that TikTok pushes things that are exceptionally antagonistic.
Oh God, yeah.
Or things that are like, oh man, people are gonna resonate very heavily with this, or people are going to very strongly disagree with this. Because like I feel that way because like I made a video called "Tanks Aren't Your Babysitters," and it was a video just primarily about just, hey, support players, stop expecting your tank to like 180 and double back and peel for you every time you're in danger. And I did not expect the video to do what it had like 14,000 views, and I was just like, what? How? What? And it was I had to block at least like 15 to 20 people.
Good God,
because they were getting nasty. It was so many people like, oh well, if you don't fucking peel for me, then you can go fuck yourself and you can go bleep bleep bleep. And then there was like the comments that you have to approve that just didn't make it in.
Yeah, once you see one of those, you're like, oh, this video's cooked.
Yes, and I was like, okay, look, y'all are getting way too heated. Way too heated. So I definitely see what you mean. Like, and also like you said, like TikTok will sometimes like brand you as someone who makes a certain amount of content, certain type of content, and will like throttle any other type of content you try to make. And it's hard to try to do both. And I have struggled very much so to try to do like art and Overwatch. But like, yeah, I think you can make it work. It's just like if you post one much more frequently than the other one,
it just isn't good. The other one's just done.
Yeah, so I would imagine it's easier to get into your car and complain about something than it is to actually make good quality music.
Yeah.
So yeah,
exactly. But I guess the point I was trying to make is that like because TikTok does that to me, if I want approval that will make me feel better about the music that I make, not like I needed to feel good about it, but just like a yeah, you got out of this rut, you did a good thing. I'll instead just go into a random Discord that I'm kind of active in. And drop a snippet into one of the in there. One, because I think it's actually because I don't belong to any music producer discords, because I don't like the people that inhabit most of them. They're weird. I'm like, I'll go into community discords for content creators that I like, and I'll post something in there, because not very many people see. It's not every day that you go into the Discord of your favorite Twitch streamer or whatever, and you go to one of the random tabs and you just see like an MP3 that you can listen to, and you find out it was made by the person who posted it, right?
Yeah.
But then the other thing is, like, as a direct result of that, it also means that, like, you know, people are talking about the new Tyler, the Creator album. They're talking about all these new artists that are coming out. People are sharing their favorite music tastes or whatever. And then I come in and I just drop something in there, and they're like, oh, wow, this is like really good. I've never heard anything like this. You know, everybody on TikTok that I ever see making music is always just putting like fart noises in their music. This is like actually something you put effort into making.
Fart noises in the music.
I imagine neither you nor anybody who's going to listen to this is on music producer TikTok ever. But that is a thing that they like to do a lot, is they'll just put random, like, people really do take the piss out of making music. And while I think it's pretty funny sometimes, I'm also like, I just want to see people making good things. I want to like find new artists and whatever. So that kind of phenomenon can happen when I post something in like a Discord and a bunch of people see it. And I get that kind of gratification of being like, oh, these people who I like actually kind of cohabitate this server with, or cohabit this server with. Either way, like, I'm like, these kinds of people, they like my stuff. Like, now they know what I do. And it's gratifying, rather than TikTok being like, here's your 250 views, now get out of my face.
Yeah, oh yeah, I definitely agree. Getting approval from actual like real people rather than from an algorithm is super, super nice.
Yeah.
Because that algorithm is not very nice, not very kind, and it's not very fair. But people tend to give you their honest opinion most of the time. And it does feel good giving real time feedback that isn't always just in the form of like a like and or a review.
Yeah.
So it's nice. It's definitely nice. I agree.
Yeah. But I literally added 3 questions onto this like 15, 20 minutes before we got here. Luckily, I can kind of just wrap them all up into one. So obviously we talked about, you're a very multifaceted person. You do plenty of other things, and a lot of those things tend to interact with other things. Personal training being a part of, like doing a lot of chess as a youngin', and then growing up and being fairly good at it. Learning and executing on art principles and ideas that you have. So like, of those 3 main things, learning art, doing chess, and being a personal trainer, like what kinds of things have you learned from all of those hobbies, pastimes, jobs, whatever, that have translated into like real world lessons that you can apply to other things?
The biggest thing from all of them is just how to learn stuff. Is like how to learn things, take things, break them down to their more individual components, and then deliberately practice those individual components. And if I had to like look at each one specifically for chess, it really just taught me about the progression of things, how something can start out a long time ago and just where it can end up, like an appreciation for the amassed efforts of countless generations of people contributing to a craft and ultimately arriving at where we are today. Like the chess we love and know today, like these moves that we see from people today were possible before, but like theoretically speaking, like on paper, but it hadn't been things hadn't been explored. Things that were previously deemed as impractical are now commonplace. The amount of openings that have been named and created are like endless. And just chess gave me an appreciation for the amassed efforts of a group of people over a long period of time. And for me, that helps me for someone who identifies as left leaning. It helps me kind of stay grounded in advocacy and activism, because I know that I might not see the fruits of my labor in my life, but I know that great things are built on the backs of multiple generations putting in work. So even if I know I won't see the fruits of my labor in my life, I know that maybe 3 generations down, they might. Gives me an appreciation for that. That's what I learned from chess.
Yeah, I do have a quick comment on that, which is I like to watch speedrunning content, because I just think it's, especially if it's for a game that I like, because it's just fun to see how people break the hell out of their game. And people typically break speedrunning down into 2 main things, which is just refining and innovating. And they described chess as like the perfect game of just refining, because it's the same game, it's the same end goal, it's the same pieces every time. And so most of it is about like refining how you can actually play the game better and learn the moves better, and understand how to counter said moves better and whatnot. And I think a good chunk of what you just explained is kind of a big portion of that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like a lot of chess, from what I've learned in my life of playing it, is figuring out, like, for example, typically when chess pros play, they're learning about openings, tactics, in-game positions, and things of that nature. And when in terms of approaching certain patterns, like I said, the game, it's the same game, and patterns repeat themselves. And if the previous precedent was to approach a certain position with a certain method of play, and it led to a certain outcome, what some people might do is create things called novelties. Novelties are just, things that they leave what is considered to be the book play style. Like he's left the book. The game has gone outside of the book. This is no longer a documented and or well explored avenue or route for this position.
Right.
And that's where innovation comes in. It's people who said, you know what? I've seen how this ends when people make all these other different moves. I don't like it.
Yeah, what if I
try something different? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like literally, well, like, okay, everybody else in this position plays H3, a knight to F3, but what if I played this?
I'm built different.
Yeah, and so it's like it leads to a different position, leads to different things, and then sometimes it fumbles, sometimes it doesn't work. But at least then that weeds that out for someone else. Someone else might so no one else doesn't have to like repeat that same mistake. They're like, okay, we saw someone try that move in that position, it ended horribly. We now know that move is not viable. On to the next potential novelty.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. And then in regards to like fitness, kind of that on a smaller scale, just diligence, sticking to something for a long period of time. I think there's a creator whose content, I don't like all of his content, but some of his content does speak to me. And one thing he said is like, what you want out of life is at the end of doing something incredibly well, and not incredibly, deliberately doing something for an insanely long amount of time. And fitness is very much so that. To build muscle, it takes a long, long time to do so. Like to build a really nice physique takes a long time. And that's what kind of kept me going through, like I said, it took me 4 years to hit GM. It's taken me 7 years to hit top 500. And I have been doing aim training, VOD reviewing, not aim training, not constantly, but VOD reviewing, studying the game for a very, 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 very long time, doing extraordinary things for an extraordinarily long time. And that is what has gotten me to the level of play that I'm at now. Is it that, are there people that have gone higher than me in less time? Absolutely.
Yeah, but it does not denigrate the amount of effort that you've put to get where you're at.
Exactly. I'm competing with me. I'm not competing with anybody else. I'm competing with me. And that's another thing that fitness has really ingrained in me. And then if I had to say for art, what art has taught me for life, honestly, I guess going back to the language thing, where like you don't have to do something really, really well for it to be worth doing. Something, I don't know what the saying is. I think anything worth doing is worth doing half-assed. But for this sake, I say something doesn't have to be done well to be worth doing. Like art doesn't have to look amazing or look super hyper detailed to be worth making.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be the next masterpiece to be worth making. And so it allows me to be a lot easier on myself and the things in my life when I do, because like I don't want to be a billionaire. I don't want to be like the biggest and most influential person in my life. And a lot of people say things like, "Oh, you gotta dream big, dream big." I don't dream big. And a lot of people might even argue like, "Well, if you're not dreaming big, then you're not living life or whatever." And I'm like, a life isn't not worth living just because I'm not doing something huge or massive.
We're getting back into the fucking life philosophy again. God damn it.
But yeah, but that's essentially what these different avenues of life have like taught me, and like things that I can take away from them, and like bring into my everyday life and how I navigate it. So yeah,
I really like those cliche art ones. Calling them cliche sounds rude, but it's like, yeah, because I think there's one that's like anything that's worth doing is probably going to be hard. There's another one that I see. I don't really know like the sort of graceful way of saying it, but there's a thing that like it doesn't have to be something that will make you a lot of money to be worth doing, in reference to like people thinking they're wasting their time because they are learning how to do art as opposed to doing something that they might already be fairly good at that they can then monetize or whatever. And then there's another one that I know of that doesn't really have much to do with this, but it's kind of just to step on elitism a little bit. It's something to the effect of, It was a totally made up quote, to my knowledge, by a developer of a game that I really like. And he said something to the effect of like, culture was not meant to only be enjoyed by those who will pay a lot to access it. And what he was referencing was the fact that there was a guy who was going to pirate video game Ultra Kill because he couldn't afford it. And a bunch of people were getting upset with him about it. And then the developer of the game chimed into this conversation and basically said that, effectively being like, hey, you know, the $25 that you would have spent on this game, like, I don't care that that's not happening because you get to experience the game. And especially for I used to be one of those people that's like, if somebody's going to pirate your game, they're never going to pay for it. But I've actually seen a surprising number of situations where somebody will pirate a game and then will be like, hold on, this game is like insanely good. And then we'll go and buy it. Like I had a friend who bought Satisfactory. He didn't buy it. He pirated it and then put like 40 hours into the game and then was like, hold on, no, this game is gas, and went and actually paid for it and continued playing. So not only do you then potentially get that return on investment where like, yeah, they will actually inevitably go up and end up purchasing the game, but like a person like him doesn't care if somebody pirates his game because that's another person who gets to learn about the game. And then either he can talk about it with his friends who may go and buy it, or maybe he'll pirate the game and then he'll go make stuff for it, or he'll go make content on the game, or anything like that. Like the fact that he even has access to that game is good for that game's space because more people will get to hear about it and it will continue to expand. And I generally think like, one, I just think that like however exactly he phrased the line, I think is like super fucking cold. Like it's cool. But another part of it is just like, maybe I don't have to put a lot of money into this sort of thing because there's some people who are like, if I put a lot of money into this thing, that will give me the encouragement to go and do it because I've lost a lot of money on it and I need to make that back with the hours I spend working on it. But it's like, you can do a lot of things in a lot of spaces without having to spend much money, and in some instances without having to spend any. So if you're interested in the thing, don't let a potential financial barrier of entry stop you from doing it. Find creative ways to get into it to at least get you started.
Hey, yeah, like I don't spend a crazy amount of money on art tools and art supplies. I literally draw with like a cheap sketchbook from Walmart and a lead pencil. I literally, I'm not using any fancy pencils, any fancy sketchbooks, any fancy equipment, fancy pens, nothing. Just straight up, like I have a Bic 0.7 millimeter lead pencil and a like less than $5 sketchbook from Walmart.
Exactly. I remember talking to somebody once being like, how much money did you spend on this PC to be able to make a streaming career? And they're like, I spent this many thousands of dollars. And I go, Jesus fucking Christ. Okay. And then I asked my friend who's also an artist, because back when I was doing this early, when I was really focused on like hyperfixating on like the talented portion of what they do or the things they've put years of their life into learning, I was like, surely you had to have spent an egregious amount of money on something. Not even egregious, but something that like if you were to explain to somebody how much that thing costs, they'd be like, are you joking me right now? So like for me in the music production space, it's like, really? You spent $150 on a virtual piano? I go, yeah, I did, because it makes my music sound good. So then I asked my one friend who was an artist, I was like, yeah, what's the most amount that you think you've spent on something in this art space? And he goes, I don't know, man, like paper.
Yeah, over time, yeah, lots of paper.
Yeah, so no, I like that. I like the do more with less mentality that a lot of people have with their things.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, we are living in very financially difficult times. I ain't got time. I mean, I guess for my PC, the PC is probably the most expensive thing I spent money on. That was like $1,300, but that was during. I saved up for it. I saved up for it while I was in college, and I bought it and built it during COVID.
Yeah, and that's quarantine. And that's to be expected from computers. So I don't blame you.
Yeah, so it wasn't like I didn't fucking buy like a $3,000 PC or anything like that. It was just, it was affordable.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'll probably going back on, I would do it again. So yeah.
Yeah. You had briefly mentioned like if you're going to make your TikTok account be based around multiple things, you need to have all of them share an equal amount of screen time. You had also mentioned on a stream that you're like taking minor steps to be able to make your art TikToks do as well as the Overwatch ones. What steps have you been taking to have them kind of share the same headspace?
Posting twice a day, one art, one Overwatch, and not giving one too much more love than the other one. essentially. If I treat them both as content. I treat them both as content. Like for example, if I know like crap, I don't have any art to post today, time to go draw. Same thing for like crap, if I don't have any Overwatch to post today, time to go record a video.
Yeah.
I treat them both with that same level of diligence, and like I'll post like an art TikTok usually before I leave for work, and then I'll post an Overwatch TikTok either while I'm at work or when I get off of work.
Yeah, so it gives them plenty of time to like gain their own traction before another one is slapped in people's faces.
Yeah, and I give them also both of them the same level of analysis, understanding what type of TikToks tend to do well and which type of TikToks don't. That can be kind of up in the air. I've found that some Overwatch TikToks are random, very random in terms of like, what people want to hear and what people care about.
Yeah.
Art TikToks are a little bit more straightforward. People like seeing you either profit off of being extremely skilled and talented and making very visually appealing art, or you make art that people feel like they can learn from.
Yeah.
They'll ask you tutorials and stuff on, and that's the type of art that I'm aiming to make. And essentially, on both ends, I'm looking at other content creators who make content and looking at how they manage to do it, what type of language they use, what type of hooks they use to get people involved in the videos, and things of that nature. And so yeah, essentially just making sure that I don't like. Because I used to do like, it'll be like 3 or 4 Overwatch videos and then an art video, 3 or 4 Overwatch videos and an art video. But if I like it, it goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. It gives people a reason to follow me and to engage with my content more, because if they go to my page and like, ooh, I like this art post that he made, but he barely posts art. Don't know if I want to follow him for art if he's barely going to post it. But if they see literally every other video it goes art, Overwatch, you're like, okay, I'm guaranteed to get some art content from this guy. And the same thing vice versa for Overwatch stuff.
Yeah, I was actually kind of impressed with how much that idea of like people going back and looking at what people have done prior to the video that they see them in for the first time. Like I was actually impressed by how much that does affect when people decide to follow, because there's plenty of people who do stuff. Like there was one guy I followed on TikTok, and I was mostly into it because he would do a lot of like he both got access to, I think, they were either like actual props from like MCU studios or like damn near that level of quality, and he would get a bunch of those. But then he also did a lot of stuff about like him actually crafting his own like superhero costume stuff out of gear that he can find, and like having to, melt shit together and deconstruct stuff. Nice. And the end product of these things actually turned out pretty good. And I followed him, but as I found out, he actually didn't. I must have found him like either early on in his career early on in his TikTok page of like doing that, or he's just a person who, because he's so involved with this kind of stuff, he doesn't post many TikToks about it because he's too busy actually doing the thing. And I could imagine that if somebody came into that and they were looking for similar content to one of the videos they had seen from him and they didn't see that much content on his page, they'd probably double take for themselves if they actually want to follow that person.
Yeah.
Or, anything like that.
So yeah, it's definitely something to think about. I remember even seeing a girl came across my account For You page because she was complaining about how people were giving her crap in her comment section. They were like, where's the yap content? Where's the yap content? And she was like, guys, yes, I yap sometimes, but only when I feel like it. If I don't feel like yapping, I'm not going to yap. I mostly post cosplay content. That was just a bunch of like a one-off yap content. It's like I'll post yap content when I feel like it, but I mostly post cosplay content. And so people will follow people for like one thing, and if they don't see that thing, they will kind of complain about it. I have had every once in a while, like if I post like multiple art TikToks in a row, I'll get people. I remember one dude was like, cool art. You should definitely post some stuff about Overwatch though. Just like, I just didn't even respond to it. I was like, okay, dude.
Yeah. So
it's people want what they want, and it's at the end of the day, I just try to like give both of my interests equal love, and I try to limit it to those two things because like I could post fitness stuff also, but I just really don't want to. But
fitness TikTok seems like it'd be one hell of a landscape to have to traverse. Like, I don't know.
I don't really like the fitness space on TikTok, and I don't like fitness spaces in general. They can be very toxic. Like, and I've learned that not just from my own experiences, but from talking to other people. Like, every time I bring up the gym with people, like so many people have such negative experiences with the gym. And what's really unique about the gym is that it's an in-person space. So this isn't like an online space where people are being protected by internet anonymity. No, these are people like congregating in person to a space and then choosing to be the product of a source of very negative experiences for people.
Yeah.
So it's a very much so like something that I don't necessarily want to get too involved in. Like of course, like I said, I make a living training people and stuff like that.
That's from
but
a professional standpoint, it's a little bit different.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, I would love to do fitness content for the sake of procuring like more clients, but like you said, I would have to navigate that space and try not to perpetuate any of the issues and problems that people have with the fitness space, which is very difficult to do because some people just will not set foot in a gym space because of the experiences that they've had.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I really do just appreciate the fact that you're like trying to diversify the content because you're like, well, I already enjoy both of these things. Like, why am I not putting these on here?
Yeah.
It
I
definitely
have a very deep appreciation for both.
Yeah, and it definitely like it draws in people more to like kind of be engaged with. They're not so much engaged with a character so much as they are engaged with you, the person. Like there was a conversation I had with somebody one time where he's like, if you don't have personable content on the internet, then all of the impersonable content that you have, people are just going to gain a level of like they're going to fall in love with that content, but they're not really going to care about the person who made it.
Yeah.
And so making personable content helps to kind of avoid that issue. So like what I've done is like almost all my TikToks have my face in them because I'm sitting in my car complaining, but all of my really high quality content that people come to me for are on YouTube, where I'm just talking about music for like an hour or whatever. So I have that dichotomy. And in your case, it's like your personable content and your impersonable content kind of intertwine in a way where like people get to hear you organically speak about issues that you believe affect the game that you enjoy playing, but they don't get to see much coming from you directly in like a physical context. And so then like occasionally when you have those TikToks that are like a video of you playing with your cat or whatever, or like, like the ones that do have your face in it, like that does something. But then also when you're doing like the art stuff, they can see like a physical manifestation of something that you do.
Yeah.
So it kind of helps people both get interested in the general content that is coming from you as well as you as a person.
Oh no, yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, the reason why I did something on my face was because of lack of gameplay footage. I was like, screw it. I don't have any Twitch clips say over my talking. Let me just go ahead and make a video. And then I leaned more towards doing like gameplay footage because I started streaming more often, so obviously I had more footage.
Yeah.
And I would show my face more often, like not stream, but like TikTok on my face more often. If I delved into different topics, with Overwatch stuff, I don't mind just making it the gameplay because I mean it's Overwatch.
Yeah.
If I were to like lean into other forms of content, like for example, because I've seen some people manage to make several different types of content, like sprinkle it in here and there. Like I've seen Overwatch content creators talk about other games. I've seen Overwatch TikTok content creators talk about food, talk about politics. And if I ever wanted to delve into those types of topics, I might do a face video. Because I feel like it would be better to grab people to realize, oh, this guy barely shows his face. What is he about to talk about?
Yeah.
And so stuff like that. But I mean, I do enjoy being able to like not be locked into one type of content, because being locked into one aspect of yourself can be very limiting.
Yeah.
It's not as fun. It's definitely not as fun.
Yeah, I definitely can I can definitely understand how that's a bit of a difficulty. I think I have the benefit of like I almost exclusively talk about one thing on one platform, and I talk about other things on other platforms. Like I use one platform to do one thing and another platform to do another thing. So like, but that's because I have the the privilege to have that easily accessible level of diversity to the things I do. Where like the things that I'm outputting actually do make some kind of difference relative to the platform that it's on. So, but either way, the mixing of it is definitely, hopefully that works out, because I don't know that many. I can't think of any off the top of my head that I'm like, there are multiple things that I come to this person for, but that could just also be because a lot of people just lean into being that character all the time on TikTok.
A lot of people do have like their shtick.
Yeah.
the shtick. There are some people that are rather diverse, but they have like one or two shticks. But usually, even if someone has multiple shticks, people are following them for one of those shticks, not all of them.
Yeah, and the proof is in like the engagement and everything.
Yeah, because I mean, there are Overwatch people that probably don't care about my art, and there are art people that definitely don't care about my Overwatch. So it's just like I'm fine with creating content for both groups of people, as long as people find value in my art and value in what I have to teach and provide.
Yeah.
And yeah, the only thing that I'm honestly working on moving forward is, like I said, making sure that everything remains diverse and remains like I'm able to contribute both to my viewers, as well as keeping people from arguing too much in my comments.
Yeah, that's always a thing that I was about to say that's a thing that we always look to have happen, but like I post political content, I can't stop people from arguing. That's literally not happening.
Yeah.
But no, I was totally expecting.
It's hard to control people.
I was totally expecting one day you're gonna post an Overwatch TikTok and you're gonna have a bunch of people in the comments who are from the art side being like, "Oh, what is this game? I've never seen this before."
No, it's like I'll have art people who say stuff like, I don't really know much about Overwatch. If I like mix the two things, like sometimes I think I did a little series that I wanted to start, but it just didn't gain traction. It was a turning Overwatch characters into JJK sorcerers, and I made some content around that, and it did all right. It did mid. It was on like 200, maybe 300 views on a good day, and I was like, and it just didn't take off. And so I was like, okay, fine, whatever, and I dropped it. But there were some people who were like, "Oh my god, his art looks really good," even though I don't really play Overwatch and stuff like that. So
fair.
But I mean, I might bring it back in the future because I think it's a cool concept. But I would probably want to improve my artistic ability a little bit more, just to give it the quality that I think would help it perform a little bit better.
Yeah, and I mean that's at least you came up with the idea in the first place, and now you can work on it whenever you feel like it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But okay, I only have two more things here. This one. I'm one of the few people who will go into your chat and will like kind of consistently redeem that like hot takes thing, and I'll vary between Overwatch and like just regular society hot takes. I'm just curious about like what some of your hottest Overwatch takes are, like fundamental beliefs that would make the community kind of upset at the idea. Like, what do you think the community isn't ready to talk about regarding Overwatch?
I plan on making a video on this soon.
Oh.
But I don't think sweaty competitive people are as much of a problem as people think they are in casual gaming spaces. Like, because at the end of the day, like there are two main reasons why people don't like sweats. Number one would be toxicity, and number two, skill disparity. The toxicity thing has nothing to do with people being competitive. There are plenty of casual people that are also toxic. I know some people are going to make the argument that competitive people are more toxic, which I can see, but I would argue that those people aren't actually competitive, because any person that actually cares about winning isn't going to actively tear their teammates down, because that's not actually going to help you win.
Yeah.
Those are like people like literally telling a dude that he's ass isn't gonna matter. He's not gonna be like, damn, you're right. Let me stop. Like, no, like
let me stop.
Like, no. So, and then on the side of like skill disparity, it's like fundamentally there are going to be people that are better than you at the game. And a lot of these people, some of these people are streamers, so naturally if they spend 10 hours a day playing the game, they're even without any competitive endeavor, they're gonna be better than someone who only plays the game when they get off of work and for like 2-3 hours. So that skill disparity is inevitable, in my opinion. And I think that a lot of people just don't want to admit that they're sore losers and they don't like losing. Because I think if you truly are a casual player, you should have the capacity to enjoy a game even when losing. Not all the time. I get losing sucks. But I do think people should have some capacity. Like if you physically cannot enjoy Overwatch without winning,
don't play a multiplayer game.
Yeah, you're probably not as casual as you think. Like if someone says, I'm a casual player, but then they get fucking, they just can't stand anything other than winning, you're probably not that casual. You're probably not as casual as you think. And I feel like that's where I'm like, are sweats the problem here? Or are we not admitting that we might just be a little bit sweatier than we'd like to admit ourselves?
Yeah, are the sweats the problem, or are we the sweats? And by extension, does that make us the problem?
Yeah, because like realistically, why do you care that dude's stomping you? Why do you care? Why you care? Why you get so pressed that he just beat you, bro? Why you getting so mad? Like, there are plenty of times I die in Overwatch. If I'm in a silly, goofy mood, I'm just like, yeah, it is what it is. I don't care. And I've grown mature enough to recognize that when I am mad about the outcome of a game, it's because I was not in a have fun mood. I was in a let's win mood. I was in a competitive mood. If I'm in a have fun mood, I don't give a shit about the outcome. I don't care. I'm just goofing. I genuinely don't care.
Yeah.
But I guess that's my biggest like Overwatch / gaming hot take is sweats aren't nearly as big of a problem as people make them out to be. It's mostly just people being sore losers.
Fair point. Yeah, I think that's one of the hottest takes that I've seen ever since one tricks aren't the problem.
Yeah, that was I still stand by one tricks not being the issue because fundamentally, I remember there was a content creator who recently talked to like his viewers about the concept of like why people hating on one tricks just is so inefficient, and it's just simply because like I think what he talked about is Overwatch puts you in so many different situations where like it is your job to solve that problem, and it keeps games diverse. One tricks unironically keep the game diverse because you know for a fact that that player base is not going to cave to the meta.
Yeah.
Like sometimes like one tricks are the only thing keeping every single game from being a mirror match. They're the one thing between every game being a mirror match, and so it's like worth sometimes to like work around them. Not because like, oh my god, you have to, but because fundamentally, like without one tricks, I feel like this game would literally just be even more mirror matchy than it is at the highest level. But I get people's frustrations with one tricks though, which I guess I do have a follow-up hot take on one tricks. Which, while I do think one tricks aren't the problem, I do think one tricks need to understand that it's perfectly okay for people to not want to play for them because they are choosing to be to some degree uncooperative.
Yeah, I think there's a certain level like let me think. There was actually a match that I was in where we had like I'm gonna say Widow one trick because I don't like Widowmaker and I want to have a reason to get mad at them again. No, I truly think it might have been a Widowmaker player, and we were kind of just getting run over because we were kind of like down one player for a good chunk of it because while we were trying to deal with their team, they would have people who would just go in and just kill them, and then we would be down a player. And we were like, dog, right now the composition that they have is not, because I think they were truly playing like full dive or like 60% dive or whatever, and they were just getting stepped on. And we were like, dog, we don't know if Widowmaker is the right choice here because while you could mechanically be good on your own, I don't think you're going to have the capacity to just take these people on, and the proof is in what's happening right now. Looking back on it now, I realize that there is a certain level of like, we can try and help propel them to be able to take care of the people who aren't countering them. But I think the thing that set us off was that they were like, if I don't play Widowmaker, we're going to lose this game. And then they swapped to a different character a couple of times and just absolutely did nothing the entire game. And my whole thought was like, I don't think one tricks are the problem by any capacity, but I do think there are certain matches where I'm like, if you literally only know how to play one singular character, like, I don't know that you necessarily need to be... I don't like that you are in my matches where the games are very... like people are just going to be changing around all the time. Like if you're gonna play certain characters, I would hope that if you one trick them, that you are at least half decent at being able to take care of your hard counters or anything like that. And I was like, if you literally don't have any ability to be flexible, that's frustrating. Because I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of like one tricks in the game at least do have some semblance of an understanding of how to play other characters, because a lot of people don't just pick one character and go, yep, I think this is the perfect one. They'll experiment around with different characters and see if they like that. So like, while one tricks aren't going to switch, to me, it seems like they would at least know what they are doing because they've played into their counters plenty of times and they know how they play, or they have played other characters to get to the point where they're at deciding they want to one trick this character. If you have straight up been like, I only know how to play this one character, and if I swap, I won't be able to do anything the entire game, I'm like, that seems like a dangerous precedent that you're setting for us right now.
Oh no, that's why I said like it's perfectly fine for people to be frustrated with one tricks. Like I think being frustrated with one tricks is fine. The only reason why I push back against it is only 2 points. Number one has to do with the age-old you can't control everybody else type of thing argument, which I get how frustrating that argument is. Because like, yes, but like if they would only just listen, then but like realistically, you can't do anything about it. One tricks have existed forever and everything. There are people. One tricks are no different than like people who refuse to not run anything other than a meta build. They have a way that they like to play the game, and they are only going to play the game that way.
Yeah.
That's just the way they are, and they've existed in every game where there are choices. The second reason has to do with a certain level of hypocrisy from the Overwatch player base, because I'm someone who cares about this game at a high level. I study the game at a high level. I try to like understand why pros pick the heroes that they do and stuff like that. And I will find that in a lot of ranked matches, there will be two teams of people running an incredibly suboptimal heroes, but for some reason they're only picking and choosing who they want to be angry at. And I'm like, okay, you're mad at this guy because he's like a Junkrat one trick, but you're playing Rhine on a map where closing the distance is damn near impossible. You're playing Reaper on a map where closing the distance is damn near impossible. You're playing Mercy while having literally the DPS I just said. And then you're also playing, Lucio with your other supporters on Mercy. So it's like, are we really gonna look at the Junkrat one trick here and say that they're the only problem? But that's usually what the community does. The community will be teams running entirely suboptimal compositions for the map, for their composition against the enemy's composition, etc. But really just singling someone out and being like, we blame that guy.
Yeah, deciding that this Junkrat is the problem because he happens to have most of his hours on this character and not.
Yeah.
We don't understand how the map should be played and therefore should not be running this
Junkrat.
Yeah.
Like, for example, I was thinking, like, if people are upset at people for their hero choices, be upset. That's fine. But it's like one of those things like, okay, are you on a good hero choice though? I think first and foremost we start with ourselves. Like, hey, let me make sure that I'm on a good hero choice for this map in our composition, and then from there, we then ask ourselves, what could I be physically doing? Where am I doing my landing my quotas? Am I doing my job? And then at that point, if you're doing your job, you're on the right hero for the situation and stuff like that. Then I'm like, okay, dude, yeah, you're doing your job. Yeah, your teammates are cooked. Your teammates are cooked at that point.
Yeah,
you're doing your job. You're on the right hero. You know what you're supposed to be doing. Your teammates just might be cooked. And that happens. That does. But I guess from my perspective, is like, it's very difficult looking at a bunch of people who don't. It's very difficult for me to. I'm trying to find the best analogy for it. Seeing a bunch of people laugh at someone for saying 2 + 2 = 7. It's very funny because they're laughing at that person for saying 2 + 2 = 7 while they think that it's 5.
Ah. Yeah.
And it's just like, okay, yeah, it's silly that he thinks that it's 7, but it's also silly that you think that it's 5.
Yeah.
So it's like, you're both wrong. It's just, I guess technically he's a little bit more wrong.
Yeah, it's like, because the thing that I was thinking about is I was like, it's weird that you are singling out this person when, like, that's where to me where it gets back to the, like, if you're gonna critique me, you better at least be as good or better. Like, if you're gonna yell at the Junkrat because he is one-tricking Junkrat, like, you might want to first make sure that you are either playing an optimal character or aren't feeding your brains out.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Like, and then also, I think I made a video talking about it. I think I might have. I might not have. I'll have to check. But there's also the statement to be made about, like, a lot of people will be anti one trick, but also anti meta, and that's super confusing to me because it's like, if you're anti one trick, you're saying, usually people who are anti one trick advocate for switching on the basis of the situation and playing the best hero for the situation. And it's like, okay, you know what's the best hero for the situation? The heroes that are the strongest right now. Why aren't you playing the heroes that are the strongest right now? If you genuinely care about having the best possible chance to win, then why aren't you playing the best heroes available right now?
Yeah, if you're going to tell me to counter swap, why aren't you also doing it?
Yeah, exactly. Why aren't you counter swapping? Why are we running anything other than Orisa, Cassidy, Genji, Juno Break? Why are we not running that? Why are we, or like subbing Orisa for like maybe JQ and subbing Cassidy for Ashe on certain maps, and maybe subbing Break for Ana on certain maps?
Yeah, they're not.
Why are we not rotating through those things? Why? And it's like, people never have an answer. It's always this idea that I should be allowed to make suboptimal hero choices while critiquing others for their suboptimal hero choices. Yeah, it's literally
I should be allowed.
It's literally the only place I can see it.
Yeah, I should be allowed to have fun playing the character that I want to play. But this guy, no, fuck him.
Yeah,
because he's playing a character who the community has deemed, and especially like. I like the point that you bring up with the one trick thing of being like, you also don't complain about one tricks when they're actively like good in the meta. Like, yeah, like Junkrat after he got buffed seems like he's been tearing apart a lot of ranks of play. I think, I don't really know. So it's like,
he has a pretty good win rate.
Yeah, so like he's doing just fine right now. So people would see him and be like, oh, this is perfectly fine. I don't care that it's a Junkrat one trick. As soon as they nerf him, or as soon as he doesn't become strong because other characters are getting nerfed, then it's when it becomes a problem. And it's like, no. Keep that same energy. If you're going to get mad at Junkrat, get mad at him throughout the whole conversation because you don't like that he's only playing one character. Not, I'm only getting mad at him because he's only playing one character that happens to not be very good right now.
Yeah, a lot of people say that they dislike one tricks, but they don't actually dislike one tricks. They just dislike certain heroes, and they don't like playing with certain heroes. Like for example, I understand I don't dislike one tricks. I just don't like playing with a Mercy on my team.
Yeah, same.
I I understand. I just really don't like playing with a Mercy on my team. None of my heroes synergize well with Mercy. I'm a support player. I usually play like Ana, Kiri, Juno, or something like that. No one really synergizes well with Mercy. I usually don't enjoy Mercy comps that much. Like if I have it in my games, I'll make it work, and I think about how to make it work, which is another talking point as to why I think one tricks are not the worst thing for the games, because it gets you. It's really like a knowledge check for you of like how flexible and how knowledgeable of a player you are to make compositions that might not be ideal work, but I digress. But like, yeah, like I understand that I don't like certain heroes being on my team. I don't like playing around. I don't like having a Roadhog on my team. I don't like having a Mercy on my team. I really don't enjoy Torb, playing with a Torb, and stuff like that. I don't really like sim compositions. I don't really enjoy them that much. But I don't hate one tricks. I just understand that I don't particularly like or enjoy playing with those particular characters.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And even at that, it's not like you're still going to find a way to make it work. You're not a lot of these people who are then going to like complain the entire game and then
Yeah, and throw and shit.
yeah, and fundamentally, just lose the game because they're tilted out of their gourd and don't seem to know how to play properly because they're so fueled with rage at a character pick in a video game.
Yeah, I'm going to try to make it work, and I feel like once you get knowledgeable about the game, you get really good at trying to make stuff work. Like if I understand, I remember I made a TikTok a while ago talking about how to win with a low healing composition, like low heals. And because people might get mad, oh my god, we're running Mercy Zen, we're running Zen Brig, we're running Zen Lucio, and I'm like, okay. Let's take a step back here. There have been Zen Lucio and Zen Brig compositions and even Mercy Zen compositions in the past. How did those compositions function? What type of heroes are played in them? And by understanding that, I can try to replicate that in my ranked games. I can be like, okay, I'm playing tank. We have Mercy Zen. I'm gonna go ball. Ball is the tank of choice in most low sustain compositions because he plays to avoid taking any pointless poke, and he plays for very fast hits and not long sustained fights. He's not playing like an Orisa where he needs a lot of resources and wants to take the longest fight possible. No, he wants to go 3, 2, 1, go, hit, win the fight right then and there, or get value and disengage and go get a health pack. That is fine. Then for DPS, you play Tracer, you play Soldier, you play Sombra, these characters that don't need as much care. That's what you do. And by understanding Overwatch and what type of compositions have been played throughout the history of Overwatch, you can adapt to even the most suboptimal situations in your games.
Yeah, so essentially what he's saying is that one tricks help you learn the game better, so stop complaining about them.
They put you in very, very weird situations where it does sometimes test your knowledge. It really does test your knowledge. Like, those cooking shows where they give you a bunch of random ingredients and tell you to make something out of it. Yeah. It's kind of like that. Like, it's like, okay, let's see how much you know. Let's see how much the depth of your bag.
Exactly.
Let's see how deep your bag is. I still think sometimes front one tricks are frustrating. I 100% do understand, especially from a social perspective. I just don't think they're like from like a logistics perspective as frustrating as people make them out to be. Socially, I get it.
Yeah, but exactly.
Like, a lot of times one tricks aren't why you're losing, aren't the only reason why you're losing.
Yeah.
So yeah.
There's actually this really, so like I have said this for a very long time and I have literally nothing to back it up, but in my heart of hearts I believe it to be true. There's a lot of things that happen in Overwatch where I'm like, if you're below a certain MMR level in Overwatch's like matchmaking system, no suboptimal choices are going to matter that much. Like the way that I think about it is I'm like, yeah, who cares that you're playing this character because we play at a fucking gold level and I don't think the enemies are going to be able to shoot you out of the sky as Mercy anyways. I don't care if they play double hit scan. I don't think their aim is up to par.
In a lot of cases I would agree. The only circumstances I wouldn't would be niche situations where I guess the weakness of a comp is so easy to exploit, I guess.
Yeah,
and exactly. I guess counter picking becomes that issue because like even your average gold player can
press
go
H.
May bash. Yeah, can press H. So I guess in that context, yeah, dog, get off that hero. But like in most situations, I would agree. It's just like counter swap. The way counter swapping works in this game. Sometimes, even a bronze player can go, Bastion Reaper, Bastion May, Malga against a Reinhardt.
Right,
so,
yeah.
And there's, there are Rhines that are good enough to win, but obviously that Rhine would have to probably be smurfing. But if that Rhine is also bronze, he's getting cooked.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's characters that are designed from the ground up to be able to counter certain aspects of a certain character. And so even if you are better than them, you have to be nominally better than them for their counter swapping to not mean anything.
Yeah, exactly.
But there are certain characters that, like, if you pick them, you don't immediately ask that the team counter swap to counter you. Like, Namely, I feel like supports are usually the ones that, at least where the realm that I play in, it's like supports are usually the thing that people aren't swapping to counter. It's always the tank or the damage. So like, even if you're playing unoptimal support comp, like as long as people are able to play around it, like, or as long as you yourself, that one tricking support or whatever, aren't like absolutely god awful at the game, like, you're not necessarily going to just lose all of your value because the people you're playing into might not necessarily have the skill or the knowledge required to know what to do about them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree. A good, like, for example, if you put the average ranked person against, like, let's say you had a ranked game and you got convinced one team to run something like Ball Tracer Zen Brig, with the other DPS being like maybe like a Cassidy or a Sombra or a Genji. No, probably a Cassidy or a Sombra. A lot of people will be like, "Oh my god, they're running Zen Brig. We're gonna win," and then proceed to get rolled.
Yeah.
Because they're like, they don't know how to exploit a team with low heals. They understand that low healing is a weakness, but they don't know how to exploit it. And or if, for example, a lot of people don't know how to exploit the fact that maybe JQ isn't the best choice on a certain map, but they don't know how to exploit the fact that JQ isn't a good pick on that map. Or they don't think, oh, well, this hero is good, or Reaper's good into Winston, but they don't understand why Reaper's good into Winston, so they're doing nothing but flanking while Winston gets to dive their supports for free. They don't understand why Reaper's good into Winston, so they're not actually able to capitalize off the counter pick.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, knowledge checks are very prevalent, are very common in this game, and it's why, while counterpicking is impactful, you still do sometimes see people getting absolutely destroyed despite them being the ones counterpicking. So yeah.
That's good. I like that. The last thing is just like a general content question. So I guess I think a part of this question is mostly reliant on the YouTube thing, since it seems like you at least have ideas on how you want to execute it, even if they can't come into fruition yet. But I'm just curious in general, where you want your content to be. It doesn't seem like it needs to move much right now because it's mostly educational and whatnot. But like, what steps are you taking to get to a point where you're happy with like the niche that you operate in across TikTok and YouTube in the future?
I want to combat misinformation. I think Overwatch is in a space where it's not, at least for ranked, it's not just that players don't know stuff. It's that what they do know is actively hindering them from learning the game correctly. And when I say correctly, I don't mean in a very like stagnant, rigid correctly. I'm talking like people's understandings of the game right now actively keeps them in their rank.
Yeah.
Not the lack of understanding. Like, they think they have an understanding with their framework and perspective on the game is keeping them in their rank. Like, there are people that fundamentally, I remember I was playing on tank with a friend who, I think we were in like gold or whatever, and one of my supports just literally was right on my ass the entire game, and she kept dying for it. And I'm like, dude, stop following me. You don't have to follow me. Oh yeah, and she was like, oh my god, oh yeah, I don't have to follow our tank. What are you talking about? And I'm like, yes. Like, why do you think you have to do nothing but follow your tank?
Why do you think you have to be stapled to me?
Yes, like there are plenty of compositions. If you look at like actual organized play or even high rank play, there are times where the tank is going off and doing their own thing. By doing their own thing, I mean taking space, within reason. You don't have to constantly have LOS of your tank. You don't have to constantly be in proximity to your tank. You don't. But they operate under that assumption, and so I'm like, that is keeping you're dying because of it. Like, you have, I think that person ended with like almost 12 deaths on Moira. You have 12 deaths on Moira because you think like that. Because you are like, it's not like you don't know, oh, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm so confused, I don't know what to do. No, you know what to do. It's just the wrong thing to do. And so I want my content to be centered around combating misinformation, combating misconceptions about the game, so that people can like abandon that misinformation and adopt more correct ways. Because I genuinely do think Overwatch can be a lot more fun if you get better at it to a point. I do think there's a sweet spot. I think once you get into like high diamond to low masters, the game stops being fun to some degree. I think the perfect place is around mid to low diamond. I think that's the most fun place for Overwatch, and maybe a little bit of high plat. That's the most fun place for Overwatch, in my opinion. But I would love to get the general player base to diamond. I would love to help players who have been stuck in meta rank their entire life hit diamond. I would love to, get people into that above average rank. And so, yeah, I want my content to pretty much, like I said, just combat misinformation, help people understand that the game is both more complicated than they think, but also simpler than they think at the same time, and really find that sweet spot for knowledge and understanding, so that players aren't like overcomplicated in the game to the point of paralysis by analysis, so they don't get to that point, but also when they don't get to like just straight up autopiloting the game constantly and then just blaming their teammates when they literally just play like a bot. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I think an important part about that is making sure that to do it in a way that will actually get them to be receptive to that information, because I think people are very stuck in the ways of the way that they have been playing the game and the information that they have been taught. And it is genuinely difficult sometimes for some of them to look at something that challenges the way that they think about the game, and in a way that would force them to have to rethink how they're playing the game. But I would almost argue that some of those people who aren't even willing to humor whatever you're saying are the people who don't care enough about the game to try and even attempt to climb a little bit.
Oh yeah. That's why also part of my content, I want to kind of counteract those people to an extent. So like the people who do take in my content, you've seen it in something like one or two of my stream titles. I have a motto: carry or cry. Carry or cry. I'm going to lean more into the micro aspect of Overwatch, what the individual player can do to win their games. So even if my message doesn't convince these misinformed players, the players that are convinced and the players that do adopt a better understanding can carry them. Can carry those misinformed players, avoid them, and then farm them. That's the goal. All right. So like to get individual players to be better. I'm not going to teach that much Overwatch macro, maybe a little bit as it pertains to like kill boxes and things like that. Like kill boxes, rotations, abusing sightlines, playing to create artificial kill boxes on the map for your team, but more so as it pertains to the individual and how they can contribute to the execution of their team composition's plan, and overall strengths, rather than focusing on the macro aspect of things. So I want individual players to be able to counteract those players that are stubborn and set in their ways.
Yeah, and it's probably a lot easier to teach them those micro plays than having to look at the entire match on a macro scale.
I actually find macro play to be much easier for people to wrap their head around than micro play.
Oh, really?
That's my opinion. I find because macro tends to encourage players to do what they already do, which is blame others. Oh. It's when you teach them, oh, this is how you play this map. What they're gonna do is they're gonna go brain off, listen to what you had to say, and then blame their teammates for not having watched the same video as them.
I see. Yeah,
that's what they're gonna do. But if you teach them on a micro level, they actually have to then adapt to be like, okay, my team isn't listening. My team isn't. What was the alternative? Or a lot of times when you arrive at what works on a macro or even a micro level, we need to understand the fundamental principles behind it. Like, for example, all right, my coach or CR2 Obstacle told me to hold this high ground on this map, but my teammates keep leaving my LOS. Okay, why was this high ground good? It met these three conditions. What other position on this map meets those three conditions? Now that's where your individual skill and creativity as a player comes in.
Right, I see.
Can I find another position on this map that meets those criteria, or even how to make a certain hero work in a suboptimal position? Like, okay, we have a Junkrat on a fairly open map, right? How do I make this hero work? Okay, are there any enclosed rooms and spaces? Yes or no? Yes, we're going to have our Junkrat control those very enclosed rooms and spaces while we play to control the open space and try to maybe force them into those enclosed spaces. Like, for example, you're playing you're playing on Kings Row. Right, you have your Junkrat lockdown hotel on defense. Now no one can go to the hotel because that's an enclosed space. No one wants to walk into that hotel with a Junkrat. No one does. Right, so you have your Junkrat just hold down hotel, and then everyone else plays for the open space and to control statue, and not let the enemy attacking team rotate around statue.
Right.
So stuff like that, right? But even though that's too even that's very macro, and some players will blame their teammates for not following that game plan and get really angry. But if I teach people on a micro level, how do you make your hero work in this situation? What type of situations does your hero like? Oh, this hero likes these types of situations. Okay, find that situation then. Widow likes to set up on long sight lines. Find a long sight line though. Tracer likes to set up on short off angles and control health packs. Find a health pack to control. Find a short off angle. Find it. Even if it's not the best one, even if it's not a perfect one, find it. Stuff like that.
Yeah. A lot of that makes sense. It's about understanding the value that your character is going to be bringing and giving them the tools that they need to be able to play almost for themselves, to make it so that you don't have 5 people who don't know what the hell they're doing. you have 4 people who don't know what the hell they're doing, and then one guy who at least understands how to play his character well to ease the burden in a way or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I also like a higher emphasis on mechanics. A lot of players don't understand. Like, a lot of players complain about their teammates being bad. I'm telling people, mechanics, you don't need mechanics to climb in Overwatch, but my God, do they help.
Yeah.
They help. But having good mechanics helps to some degree, because there will be just some games where I don't care how good of a Mercy you are, I don't care how good of a Brig you are, I don't care how good of a Lifeweaver you are, I don't care how good of a Moira you are, Junk or whatever. You sometimes just need the mechanics to perform. You sometimes need the mechanics. You sometimes have to pop off the win. It's just an unfortunate truth of the ranked experience. You will sometimes have to be the hero that your team needs, and sometimes we'll need mechanics to do that. So I do encourage people to invest in their mechanics also.
Right. Okay.
So
yeah, I like that. That's all good. That's all well and good. I guess. Yeah, that's about everything. That was about everything we were looking for. So I guess given that you have helped a lot of people understand how to play the game on a better level than they were prior to showing up, the ideal hope is that we can get people from here and push them to that direction to help facilitate that kind of success. So, I mean, where can people find you so that can happen?
I usually try to post content on my TikTok every single day. TikTok is CR2 Obstacle. And I essentially try to post, like I said, every single day. I post at least one art TikTok, at least one Overwatch TikTok every single day. Pretty much the only day I probably might not is maybe on a Sunday, because Sunday is my off day, but I usually do try to. And then you can find me on Twitch at CR2_Obstacle. I stream, once again, pretty much every day except for Sunday. I likely will stream at night from the hours of 10 p.m. to 1 a.m. That's usually when I stream. But if I do want to stream at a different time, I typically let people know on my Discord, I do have a link to on my Twitch. I'll let people know on my Discord if I'm going to be streaming at a different time. And I try to make sure that during my stream, I'm talking about the things that I'm doing, why I'm doing the things that I'm doing. And I do give some examples of individual accountability. Like, you'll hear me saying things like, you know what, I could have done that better. I didn't land any nades that fight. That's why we lost that. Or I definitely could have used my ult faster or sooner, or not held my ult as long, or stuff like that. So, yeah.
All right, sweet. Yeah, so we're going to have all the links in the description because it's really easy to find. Again, luckily, most people are pretty good about, like, you find me in one place and then you can use all the links in that one place to go find everywhere else, and then suddenly you're following them everywhere. So that's where you can go if you're looking for my stuff for whatever reason. I have a link tree at the bottom of the description, but it's just DJ Cereal Sauce on anything, either as one word, with spaces, or with underscores. So that's Twitter, that shit show of a platform, Blue Sky, that less shit show of a platform, Twitch, YouTube, Spotify, obviously this podcast. Fucking what else? I don't even know. I have like a Ko-Fi if you want to commission for some beats or something. All those places, but again, we have a link tree to help simplify all that down. So, I mean, man, I appreciate you coming on here, Aubstacle. It's been great talking with you. Great to actually have like a one-on-one conversation with you, as opposed to me like frantically typing something funny and slightly insightful at my desk at work.
Yeah, this was fun. I enjoyed this. This was nice. Hell
yeah. So yeah, that's where you guys can check everybody out, myself included. You can check out everybody. Everybody is involved with everything. Hopefully we'll be getting back to the podcasting game fairly soon. Hopefully you'll see Aubstacle on Twitch fairly soon. And I guess that's where I'll take my leave. I'm going to go back into your chat and keep gambling all of my channel points.